It is 5:30, so we'll call our meeting to order. We would do the roll call, please.
Okay, Member Abraven?
Present.
Member Atkins-Tufts?
Present.
Member Blount?
You guys can hold it down, please, so we can hear the roll call. Thank you.
Member Blount is absent. Member Bush?
Kelly's outside. I just saw.
Okay. Member Dixon? Member Fox?
Here.
Member Grundy Gomez?
Here.
Member Eide?
Here.
Member Merritt? Member Mitchell?
Present.
Member Nielsen?
Here.
Member Palmer?
Here.
Chair Pollitt?
Present.
Vice Chair Seawright?
Present.
And Member Turner Evans?
Here.
All right, thank you. We have a motion to adopt the agenda. So moved. Second. Any additions, changes, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have a motion to adopt the minutes from the last meeting. So moved. Second. Any corrections, changes, addendums? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Approved minutes. We have a request to address the board. Cultural Arts Coalition, Fifth Avenue Arts Festival sponsorship.
Okay, so Nkwanda Ja had...
Sorry, I did have a question about that.
You have a question about the minutes?
I did.
Oh, that's what I was asking. If you
Yeah,
had
I
that.
did. I had asked because originally there was a couple things that were voted on that I did not see in the minutes, and I wanted some clarity on that.
Okay, so I went back and listened through the recordings, and all of the motions that were seconded are in the minutes.
Okay.
Is there anything in particular? I'm sorry.
No, ask a question. I wouldn't hit it. I wouldn't
He
hit
asked
it.
for
Yeah.
specific things last meeting to be brought back, and the reason why is because sometimes we've asked for them in passing, and it just kind of fell by the wayside. It was like it never happened. So we made some movements and motions, Mr. Chair, at the last meeting, and they were seconded and voted on. And so that's what specifically I asked, and I concur.
And you don't see
I'm
them
correct.
in the
I'm happy.
minutes? Okay, all right. So the minutes stand approved. I will say that if that needs to be corrected, we can certainly do that.
Thank you.
Again this time. We have the request to address the board.
Okay, so is there anybody from the Cultural Arts Coalition? Okay. Yep, you're up.
Please.
It might not be on here.
I can speak.
All right, my name is Courtney Scott. I am representing the Cultural Arts Coalition. I'd like to start out by saying thank you guys for taking time to allow me to come here and speak. On behalf of the Cultural Arts Coalition, our directors, volunteers, and staff, we'd like to say thank you to the CRA for your historic support of the Fifth Avenue Arts Festival. We'd like to also say thank you for your continued support of the Fifth Avenue Arts Festival. This year's festival will be taking place April 24th, 25th, and 26th. It will be kicked off Friday, April 24th, with a reception at the A. Quinn Jones Auditorium, put together by the Delta Sigma Theta sorority and the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. We have food, entertainment, and it's an opportunity for the community and the vendors and the organizers to really get together and rub shoulders. It's followed by our opening of our Streets Festival on April 25th. That's a Saturday. We'll have live music, art vendors, food. I believe this year we're going to have some animals out there, so that's going to be interesting. And plenty of activities for kids. We're underway coordinating with a lot of local nonprofits and businesses, the local museums, the CRA being one of the people who are sponsoring us heavily, and visit Gainesville. And we have a very exciting festival planned for 2020. Do you guys have any questions for me about this year's festival? Yes.
Who's the main stage star Saturday night?
Main stage star, I believe right now we have Little Jake coming on at 5, and we are trying to see can we find one more person to follow him. Sir.
Do you have any plans on, I guess, to liven it up or to make sure, because it looks like for the last few years it's kind of seen de minimis crowds and attention. Are you doing anything different than you've had in years past?
Well,
Liven up or bring some flavor and life to it?
Yeah, well, we are trying to incorporate social media to kind of bring more people in. This year we are focusing on having more live entertainment, more live bands to try to bring more energy to the atmosphere.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, what is the history of the TRA participating in the budget?
The monetary, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
One second. I believe historically the CRA has donated up to $2,500 for at least, I would like to say the last few years.
So maybe this question is for staff. Has this been budgeted routinely each year, given the history of it?
Yeah.
Was it 2,500 versus the 3,000 request?
What I could find in 2019 we gave 2,000. In 2015 we gave 2,500, and in 2014 we gave 2,500. And I do remember participating as long as I've been at the CRA, which is the last 4 years. So it's been around between 2,000 and 2,500 each year.
Well, Mr. Chair, there is something to be said for precedence and tradition. I'm just unfamiliar with what tradition and precedents are. If anybody wants to expand on that, I'd be glad to listen, but I'm inclined to hear.
Member Seawright has some history.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Nelson, it's, CRA has sponsored it, I believe, since in some form or fashion, since about 2010, actually. Because I remember being, when I was on the staff. So it has been, the amounts have increased, of course, as they've shown us that prices have increased. But we have participated, and it has been historically under the Fifth Avenue Pleasant Street CRA board when we were in full board. So that was one of their signature projects, signature events every year. So that's how it was sponsored, under that particular board.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Also to Member Nielsen, I do believe also that traditionally the organization and group for the Fifth Avenue Arts Festival, they've had a line item in the general, it comes out of the budget, not just from CRA, but also out of also coming to them. And I forgot what that amount was in the budget, but I don't want to say the Aquinas organization, but I want to be respectful of
Cultural Arts Coalition.
the Arts Coalition has had a line item in the budget. What that is, I would defer to city staff, but that should be brought forward. But I think that also, I'm with you when it comes to precedent. I think that's a great point.
Mr. Chair, how much are they asking for this year?
3,000.
3,000? Well, that's only $500 more. Is it possible for us to give the 3,000? I know things have gone up and they had to cut back on some things last year because of the expenses of the sound and things of that nature. So I don't think $500 is going to make that much of a difference to the budget. What do you say, staff?
I understand the precedent issue, but given the new arrangement for the CRA, is there a budget for sponsorships? It's not just necessarily this one, but for all sponsorships really?
It looks like there's a line item. I mean, I don't know if there's anything in the news, but there is a line item on our budget, very bottom for the Fifth Avenue Pleasant Street Board. I believe that's the residual budget. It looks like it's about.
Well, we haven't had that presented yet, so
Yeah.
maybe you could explain, is that going to be something programs and partnerships, is that something?
So yeah,
that-
I would add that Sarah Godolphin, CRA staff, we have not had a formal way for people to apply for this, and we, moving forward, are going to try to come up with a mechanism, for moving forward, kind of having a process by which we prepare a year in advance for things to sponsor, because obviously this one's happened for a while and we've supported it. But right now, there's kind of no mechanism for it except that people ask to address the board and then come before the board and then the board votes.
But to answer his question,
but to answer
there is
your
funding
question-
available in
Yeah,
this-
so that is only new money. The spreadsheet you have, and I wouldn't use that as a reference for making this decision, but there's money available to fund the festival.
Okay, this isn't that past budget, residual budgets that we just.
No, it's not.
Okay.
No, it's not. And we'll explain more about that spreadsheet. It's very confusing if you haven't been told about it. So we'll dive into that in our item.
I have a question. So outside of, is there anything, and I'm cool with the precedent too, but to me, there's going to be a lot of other organizations that are also have a rich history, also equally as deserving. To me, outside of just cost alone, do you have anything like a line item budget to justify why you need an increase? Because I'm happy to do that right now.
Well, yeah, there's quite a few line item budgets. One of them would be, we're adding a poster to 13th and 441. Historically, we put a billboard at the border of Florida and Georgia and at the intersection of the Turnpike and I-75. We're adding another piece of promotion right here in Gainesville at the intersection of 441 and 13th, right above the Kangaroo. That's a $900 item right there.
So, do you think, and I try to attend every year
Yes, ma'am.
that I can, do you think that is money well spent for the banners? Because I know they can be quite expensive. Have that generated any more participants or people coming to the Fifth Avenue Festival? I would support it and recommend it and make a motion if we could justify how the dollars are spent. But I don't feel comfortable spending our dollars on banners, because last year we had, did you all do that last year?
We did the billboards last year. We did not do a poster in the city limits last year.
Okay. Well, last year was the lowest turnout that I've seen since I've been here almost 30 years.
Okay.
And the weather was really bad. Some years we've had rain and things of that nature. But last year was a picture perfect day.
It was quite nice.
It was a beautiful day. And the crowd was less, there was not as big a crowd. Well, that was the smallest crowd I've ever seen. So if you're doing something to generate a bigger crowd and to tap into other people, I would say yes. But if you were just doing it to put the billboards, I don't see where that would generate any more people. I don't know.
You also said to your credit for marketing that you were doing more social media, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a thing like if you're doing, whether it be, if you were telling me, hey, I'm doing search engine optimization, I'm doing to make sure we're found, how we're doing that. Your marketing campaign, you is geared toward how you're doing it. There's a cost to that, but I'm with Member Fox. I'm like, billboards, because if you did that last year and it's more the same and we're seeing a de minimis return, what's the return on our investment?
Okay, so to be fair, I didn't come prepared with a specific line item to justify the $500 increase. Thank you. But that's just one that came up to mind. We're also putting a backline of instruments on the stage so that we can have more bands play. That's a $540 thing. There's quite a few things we're doing, but let me just answer what you said about last year being the lowest attended year that you have seen. I started helping out, this is 2020 and 2017. In 2016, the attendance was so low that I don't believe it was lower than it was ever. So the first year I came on, I think we probably doubled the attendance, and then last year we doubled it again, so it may have been low based on what you have seen, but based on what I've seen over the last 3 years, we're building it back up. And there are multiple avenues that we're using to try to get it to that level. I understand that the billboards aren't really deserving of your funding, but there are other things we are trying.
Thank you. Can we get a motion?
And that's what I'm about to do. We don't want to talk about it all evening. Mr. Chair, I move that we allocate the additional $500 to bring the amount requested to the $3,000.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to fund the $3,000 request.
Sorry.
Any discussion?
Yeah, my one question is, where's the money coming out of? What
Coming out of-
budget, which budgets?
Yeah, it would come out of the, I think it would come out of the old money.
And do we
It
have,
really doesn't, yeah, at this point, it kind of doesn't matter, and we'll get more into that, but.
I guess I was just asking for sake of, I don't know whether this is gonna be kind of a consistent thing going forward in the next couple weeks, whether we're establishing a precedent or what we're doing.
Sorry, I misunderstood her. Did she say it didn't matter where it's coming from?
Yeah.
Because
She
she's
meant
got
which one of these budgets.
Which
There's-
budget, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, what,
It's going to get all shaken out as we go through the next part of our thing. There is funding,
the funding is available.
and staff, I want to be clear, is saying that it is reasonable and professional and within standards for us, to, if we choose to do this, to fund it out of this budget. More discussion.
Mr. Chair, just real quick, just because I want to talk about precedent. This is one board now, as we all know, but it used to be 4 boards. This is not the only organization that comes for donations. It's just the first one that we've seen so far, and maybe the other ones might not even come. But each area had different people who got funding for this type of sponsorship. So the precedents was set a long time ago. I guess now, because we're one board, we just have to look at it a little differently, which we certainly will, I'm sure, as we get through the budget. But I just want to say, this is not the only organization that has come for this type of funding.
Okay, thank
Mr.
you.
Chair, could I add just to the motion that we have staff delineate the past designations for funding for items like this and give us a sense of what the history is and have it just tallied up for us.
Yeah.
So it gives us a chance to make some decent decisions in the future.
Okay, is that good with our motioner and the seconder? Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, and 1 abstain. 1 no. Sorry. Motion passes. Thank you, sir.
Again, I'd just like to thank everybody for the opportunity to speak, be heard. Got no pleasure.
Under communications, is there a staff report? A director's report.
Can I just remind everybody, if you haven't signed up for your City of Gainesville email address, we have 2 laptops over there. You could do so after the meeting. And then once you've switched over, just let me know and we'll have all of your contact information updated.
I have a question and a problem with that. I had to call IT or something. I don't know what time it closed, but I had to call IT.
That's all.
You're going to get with her
I guess.
to solve that. Okay.
Question on that same matter. On these cards, it says authenticator PIN. Is that when you use the app on your phone to get a?
Mhm.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, but we can come by your office and set it up, I think.
You can,
That
yes.
would be better. Okay, thank you.
It is confusing. It took me, it seems like 20 minutes to do it when I got here.
It is.
Is there a director's report? There's no chair's report except to say thank you to Vice Chair Seawright for covering last month. Thank you. Old business, revised rules of procedure for the GCRA Advisory Board.
Okay, so this is me. I'll stand up for this one. So it's come to our attention that the bylaws that we adopted aren't in accordance with city, so we need to revise them. The revised bylaws are in your packets. They were drafted by the city attorney. They're pretty much the same thing. There are a few areas where they say the same thing as the last bylaws, but use slightly different language. But there are 3 changes. I just wanted to go over them pretty quickly with you. The biggest change is in the attendance policy. So the previous policy required members to be here within 15 minutes of roll call and to attend 2/3 of all meetings. The new policy requires you to be here for half of the meeting and for half of B meetings, so 50% attendance. So it is a little bit looser than the previous version. And these are meetings where voting occurs. So like tonight, we have quorum, you voted to adopt the agenda, that counts as a voting meeting. Next month's meeting, the March meeting at the Cave Museum, where it's also a public event, there will be no voting, so that won't count towards attendance. But we still hope you'll be there. The second part is the current bylaws require Robert's Rules of Order to govern all meetings. The new bylaws allow you to use Robert's Rules of Order as a guide, but it's not mandated, so the chair can choose to deviate from it if they wish. And this is a good thing because Robert's Rules were created for larger parliamentary bodies. So just, you being a smaller board, it gives you a little bit more flexibility in how you want to run meetings. So in Article 5, Section 1, we just removed that meetings can be canceled for lack of agenda items. In the past, we would cancel meetings if we had no agenda items, but the ordinance states that this board meets monthly, so we will no longer cancel a meeting due to lack of agenda items. And then the final thing is Article 6. We just removed report of officers and committees from the order of business because it's not relevant to our board. So those are all the changes. Our recommendation is to approve the revised rules, and then we'll take them to City Commission for final approval.
So real quick, we're going to have meetings with no agendas, possibly?
We don't expect to not have agenda, because we've been pretty busy. We've actually been working to keep the agendas light. So, yeah.
Other questions about the presentation?
Well, Mr. Chair, just a brief comment. The font size on here is just pressing the limits of my glasses.
Okay.
Now, I can read it, but it's not fun.
Okay.
And the same thing goes for your PowerPoints. I think you have room to, that's okay right there, but the previous slides, you could amp up those.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, we'll make a note of that.
You're not mistaken. No, really, you can do that.
Okay,
Thank
yeah,
you.
that's easy.
Any other questions, comments? So you need this voted on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have a motion to approve? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The main event, draft reinvestment plan update.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening.
I need the mic.
Please.
Please. All right. Are we on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
There. Great. Again, good evening. How are you? This is very exciting. As many of you know, this is a process that's taken us some time, but we've got a lot of great momentum, and we're moving towards completing a plan, which we'll talk about, that is going to take us in the future, which we're really, really excited about. First thing I want to do is kind of give you a lay for the land for this evening. First thing we're going to do, we'll have this presentation. I will do my best to present it cleanly and as quickly as possible, and hopefully you can reserve your questions for the end so that we can give everybody an opportunity to speak. After my portion of the presentation, Sarah is going to jump up and she's going to give us some thoughts and more description related to budget, which I'm sure you're all very, very interested in. One thing I want to also make note of is that this week is the last week for our community engagement, where we will be meeting with the public tomorrow evening. We're very excited about that. It's another opportunity for us to learn more. As I've said in the past, every time we come to these events, we learn something new, which is part of the process of learning, which we love. So before we get into this, one of the things that I always want to ask myself is why? And you're probably asking yourself, why are we doing this? And starting why really matters, because it starts to give you a sense of purpose and belief in what is about to occur. One of the books I've been reading lately, again, it's one of my favorites, is Peter Katayama's For the Love of Cities. I highly recommend that you read it. It really touches on some things that are really important to cities as a body, as a place. Cities are important. And when you love a city, just like when you love your child or you love your wife, things are better, right? So we really want to make sure that this body carries forward the love for Gainesville. It's super important. You guys are our guiding light. You're there to make sure that this GCRA makes it to 10 years very, very successfully. And we need you to be critical. We need you to ask questions. We need tough love. We need to do things well so that at the end of the day, we're all very happy. So I think what's important is that we make sure that we capture the soul of the community, right? That's what's important. And people care about places because they care, right? It's one of those things that you just can't take away. If it's easy for someone to throw trash on the street and just keep on going, that means they do not care, right? They've lost their soul. And we want to make sure that Gainesville retains its soul. So I'm going to run you through this presentation. So you all know what's happened so far. We've done quite a bit. But to summarize it very quickly, from 2018 to where we are today, we've done quite a bit of work. The Community Vitality Report started to really pull the essence of what the community was asking for. And also, what it did was it initiated the beginning of the planning to get us to where we are now. Right now, we just completed 2019. There was a lot of listening and learning. The city also adopted new ordinances, created a new board, did a lot of things so that we could be here today together. And now where we are is super exciting because our team, and I'd like to thank everybody on the team, the CRA, GCRA staff, I mean, everybody knows who you are, but wave your hands. And you here on this board, thank you for your guidance and input. We cannot do this without you. We just can't. It would be half-baked. It wouldn't be fully cooked. And we want to make sure that it is, and it comes together very well. So thank you. First and foremost, thank you very much for your time. So you may be asking yourself, what's in the plan? So one of the things that we have to do as part of our previous statutes is do an annual report. So the annual report is in the plan, but there's also a lot of information related to the future. So what I'm going to touch on really quickly is some of the main aspects that are in the plan. The purpose is really straightforward here, spelled out for you. And this is meant to be a guide. It's like a master plan, okay? This is not something that's so prescriptive that we can't be flexible because we know that the market changes, things happen, we want to be able to adapt to them, right? If we see some opportunity that we want to take advantage of, you, this board and the city, has the opportunity to bring that forth to advantage of. I think what's really great here is that we were able to rely on the history of the plans from the past, use that as our touchstone, but evolve it forward into one plan, which is really, really amazing. So it's one single reinvestment district. So to touch on the purpose, we're going to talk about the past, which we know is included in this, the present, which is this fiscal year 19 snapshot, which is our annual report. We're going to go into the future and show you some initiatives that are going to lead us through the next 10 years. And then we really want you to understand that this is from the heart. Everything you see here is informed by the community. It's informed by you. It's informed by our city leaders. This is our plan, right? This isn't something that somebody cooked up and just landed here from Mars. This is our plan, okay? We want you to own it. So, the future. So, since October, we became who we are today, this new GCRA, Community Reinvestment Plan, our area. And as you know, EDSA started participating in this process in the middle of October through several meetings, getting us to where we are now. You've all seen this slide a million times, right? But we have to keep bringing this back. It's like our guiding principle, guiding touchstone. We are now one district. I heard a lot of conversation earlier about our former this, our former that. We're now one district, right? All tides raise ships, right? We're together. There's one budget, we know how it's capped. But I think one thing that's very important here is if you look at the one decade, if we were to stop in fiscal 19, all right, some of these areas wouldn't receive the type of funding that they deserve. For instance, Fifth Avenue Pleasant Street cycles out in 2029. And so we want to make sure that we are able to get everybody to the point they need to be through the process of this reinvestment plan. The process, you guys have seen this before as well, but I think what you understand, what the purpose of this slide is that at the end we have one GCRA reinvestment plan, one community reinvestment plan. But the process is very straightforward. We took the former CRAs, we looked at those redevelopment plans very well, we studied them intently, and then we began to analyze the information that we knew was at hand, such as the opportunity zones, land use, open space, circulation, and especially the relevant studies, because there's a lot of studies that have already been done. But we want you to know that this is not another study. This is a plan. This is an action plan to get things completed. We couple that with community engagement through public workshops, surveys, neighborhood association meetings, and stakeholder workshops. All this information has allowed us to get into this little dash box we're in right now, which is the draft. First draft, you've seen already. This is the second draft you're going to see this evening. And we're going to come back with a final review, and then it's off to the races, which is really, really exciting. So in terms of community engagement, as you know, we've done quite a bit of it. I think what's important about the community engagement is that not everybody was able to participate. So the people that participated really provided us a lot of great information. Some people participated in person, some people participated online, but most importantly, the public was highly encouraged to attend these meetings. Some people came to multiple meetings. In most cases, there were different people at all the meetings. Right? There were a few common people, but certainly there were a lot of new faces. New faces, people who just arrived in Gainesville. Some faces are people who have lived here for several decades, so that's important to us. And you can see that there was a lot of interaction. All the meetings were highly intended. They were very well focused on participation, which was very helpful for the plan. You've also seen this before too. And I want you to understand that these results you see here are informed by the people that attended the meetings. They're color-coded for the areas, the former areas. And this is the community feedback portion of this presentation. So you know how we got to where we are today. You can see that the larger circles with the higher percentages basically indicates that more people cared about those particular either initiatives or projects or opportunities. Again, this is a snapshot, so not every area adds up to 100. It's just a percentage of participation that we saw from those events. And then we looked at the objectives. If you remember, the former CRA had several objectives. Does anybody have a number? How many objectives did we have before? It was all different, and each one, some objectives were overlapping, some redevelopment plans shared objectives, but in most cases there were good 10 plus objectives in each one, and several initiatives underneath those objectives, so there was a lot of stuff. But when we asked people to go back and sort of, review those objectives and prioritize those objectives, this is what we learned. Look what's at the top, economic development. CRAs do that very well. That's one of the main purposes of these types of bodies. Housing was right behind, commercial activity. All these things were important to many aspects of the entire area. Historic preservation. Most people didn't care that much about parking, which is very surprising, but that's really what we learned, what we heard. And then we did several surveys, and as you know, there's a survey that's still open. We're going to add more information to that survey process online, and it's not going to close until March 5th, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But when we ask people these questions, what are the best 3 words to describe the area? Historic, unique, resilient. Pretty straightforward. What are your favorite things that need to be protected? History, like number 1, history was way out there. Local businesses also came up pretty high. And most people believe you have a good sense of community here, so I felt that was very telling. When we went across to ask people what are the most important reinvestment considerations going forward, again, economic development, way up at the top. When we asked them what are the top 3 things you'd like to see, more local businesses, which equals economic development. So you can see where people were aligning. And the good thing about that is that we have a lot of the same feelings as consultants, as designers, as well as the people here in this room. So I found that very interesting that we were able to tie it all together. But this was a process, you know, and when you talk about placemaking and some of those other planning terms, placemaking has a lot to do with the process of getting people together to get to something that they all desire as one. So it was really great for us to see this come together. All right, so again, as we touched on the reinvestment objectives, in the past we had redevelopment objectives. There were several of them. We have consolidated them based on what we felt was the most applicable to this new GCRA. And the objectives have basically boiled down to three major buckets, and we'll talk about the percentages of our opportunities in each one of them. And all of this was based on a series of community meetings that were based on time internally. We discussed the importance of these different objectives. There was a lot of discussion, trust me. There was a lot of discussion that went into this. As a matter of fact, I believe at your last meeting, you guys had quite the debate about objectives. I mean, this is a very important thing because objectives are like goals. Objectives are very important because they're kind of the thing that guides you. You want to stick in your lane for what you do. You need to have something to kind of hold you in place so you can be very surgical and get things done very well. So we have economic development, community enhancements, public space, and streetscape. I'm going to touch on that in a little bit more detail as we go through this. We've re-engaged these maps to help us understand a little bit more about what we're trying to do. And one thing that we want you to pay attention to is that within the GCRA, there are many tools that are available for redevelopment and reinvestment, and those tools basically apply across the entire area. But most importantly, we try to identify priority areas for the economic development, priority areas for community initiatives, and priority areas for streetscapes. You can see the blue highlights the streetscapes that we feel are important for some sort of participation. Doesn't mean we're going to do it all, because obviously many of these streets are operated and owned by different entities, but it does mean that these things are important to us as a group. We also took these circles and started to identify areas of impact. Okay? So it doesn't necessarily mean that that's a big project, a small project, or anything. It just means that that's a place where we know from what we've heard and from what we see as professionals needs some input. In the past, we touched on how the circles denoted in size the amount of investment or amount of attention we feel is required there. And so we kind of kept that same vernacular here. As you can see, Cornerstone has a large circle with economic development. We think that that's a great opportunity for economic development to grow there, even across Hawthorne. So we think there's great opportunity in that area. Same thing goes with Waldo Road and 8th Avenue, another great opportunity for growth there. So we started to look at different aspects of the entire plan to really sort of hone in on and focus on our priority areas. Okay? So these are reinvestment opportunity areas. Okay? They're not specific projects, just areas, right? Within those areas, we touched on the economic development for this portion to really touch on what we mean by that. Okay, so when you look at the map, you'll see that we've listed on the right-hand side all the types of things that can happen within this objective. So on the right-hand side, those are essentially incentives, their initiatives, their opportunities to foster economic development. Does that make sense? Is it clear, everybody? So we wanted to make sure that we were able to highlight that, and we also gave you examples of the types of projects that have been completed in the past that show you the power of the CRA, what types of projects we can do when we apply our economic development smarts. So again, the entire GCRA area is eligible for all sorts of reinvestment opportunities. But what we did here in this particular map is we highlighted the areas that really have an economic development focus. It doesn't mean that economic development isn't going to happen in other areas. And I want to touch on that as I get through all these objectives. One of the things we've learned through this process is that layering is very important, and it's important for our objectives to work together, to play together very well. Community enhancements. We know that community is very important. We also know that there are areas where we have great residential character and history that needs to be promoted. And in this slide, we're showing you the areas that we would highlight and promote those types of investments. And you can see on the right, again, the types of initiatives, whether it's arts and culture, whether it's access to food, access to different types of housing, infill housing, local history, things like the Heritage Trail, the A. Quinn Jones Museum. Those are great examples of how we can enhance community as a group here. Right? There's just so many things we can do. And as I continue to go through this, you'll see that there's some things that we can do very, very well and we should lead. There's some things that we do well that we should partner with, and some things that we should just support. It's not in our main wheelhouse, but we want to leverage and support those activities going forward. And then finally, public space and streetscape. We are all very familiar with all the different initiatives and different programs within the city that support these types of projects or initiatives. We want to support those, but I think it's important to understand that the CRA can provide all sorts of different incentives to allow these types of projects to take off. I'll give you, for instance, for Cornerstone, one of the projects that was completed there really needed some incentive as it related to infrastructure. They were able to reach out to the CRA to get help with that, and that allowed that project to go forward. So I think when we start to look at that, you really need to look at the economics and how the economics work very well together when you partner. So again, on the right-hand side, to support this objective, this goal, there are several different types of initiatives, from lighting, bicycle facilities, parks and plazas, even the utility modifications that we know we can help with when we partner with other groups that can do a major portion of it as well. All right. So through all of this, it had to be validated by the community. And we're going to do another exercise tomorrow evening to make sure that we're on the right track, that we're hearing everything. As you can imagine, we get all sorts of calls, all sorts of ideas are coming in, and we're filtering it in, and we'll show you how that process works to get us forward in terms of prioritizing these big ideas. But just to touch on some of the stats, 14 community engagement meetings over 6 months. As you know, we wrap up in March. The advisory board meetings, 275 community participants. And I do this a lot, okay? This is my whiteboard, my profession. This doesn't happen all the time. In many of the places we work, people just don't show up. I mean, maybe they don't care, maybe they're tired, they have other things to do, they want to watch a football game, it's just not important. But I gotta tell you, we're very, very impressed with Gainesville. People show up, people have ideas, and they want to be heard. And then we launched this survey, and fortunately with technology today, we can do a lot with surveys right on your mobile device. You don't need to have cable at home or any of this stuff. You can have access. Most people have a smartphone. 219 survey responses. That's pretty high. It's very, very high. So we're very proud of this. You should be very proud of this. We want to make sure that everybody knows that we do our best to make this as inclusive as possible. So community feedback from January 15th, 2020. So this is very recent snapshot. And we talked about a lot of different ideas. We asked people, are these the areas you want us to invest in? We also asked people, are these the objectives? And you can see through all the data that is received, we got a lot of really good input. You know, most participants put emphasis on small business startups, business monitoring, health access, and food access. You can't read these slides because they're very, very small. I really want to make sure that we make it clear to you that what we heard is that people wanted to have access to local businesses. Right? Hold your question. I'm going to get through this real quickly, okay? Then we asked people, which budget implementation strategy do you prefer? This you should be able to read. And you all saw this in the past. We had a lot of good input from community members in regards to how do we pay for this. Everybody seemed to land on a mix of both approaches, whether it was a front-load approach or even spend approach. So these things really helped us to validate what we were learning along the process. So, the draft plan. Lots of projects, as I noted before. We received several ideas. And we took those ideas and we generated what is called a word cloud based on all the words we heard from people. And we wanted to get an understanding of what areas, what things, what types of projects were most important. The Power District, for whatever reason, rose pretty high because I think a lot of people understand that that's an opportunity for growth. But Duval neighborhood was in there, Cornerstone was in there, Heritage Trail, a lot of really good projects. And we started to figure out, well, how do we prioritize this? You know, the people who are at those meetings are giving us one snapshot. We need to learn more from you and from others. So we developed a very simple criteria, which I'll show you next, to help us kind of fine-tune and funnel these projects into the priority projects and programs going forward. This is kind of an internal criteria that we've used to kind of help guide us. This isn't something that the community members will grab to kind of go through. This is really more internal for this group. The first question we ask ourselves is the initiative even in the GCRA? Is it in our area? Second question we ask this is that do the initiatives address the objectives that we are trying to develop here? And third, we ask ourselves, do the initiatives consider existing city plans, projects, or initiatives, such as Planned Escapes, Gainesville, wild spaces, public places? Does it promote equity and inclusion? All these things were very important to help guide us in terms of which projects need to be considered in that list. And then from the Vitality Report, we learned a lot, and we learned that these layers, these different types of elements really help promote solid projects and make them more successful. So scale, authenticity, integrity, partnerships, health and safety, connectivity, and layers. All these things are very important in regards to really generating the best. Then we took a stab at a roadmap. And again, this is a draft. And most of you board members should have these in your packet, so it's hard for you to read on the screen. Please pull it out and take a quick look at it, and I'm sure you'll study more as we go through the question and answer period of this process. We looked at the community enhancement investments, everything from midtown policing, quarters in Pleasant Street, North Block housing, property acquisitions, all sorts of things that would allow for communities to be better and more enhanced. We thought that that list of projects and opportunities were very important, especially the historic Heritage Trail and all others, including Duval neighborhood improvements. As it relates to economic development, we looked at major initiatives that we feel that we can have a lot of impact on. 8th Avenue and Waldo improvements, the Cornerstone campus. We also looked at opportunities at the Power District and a job center. So again, we're starting to show you the types of things that we can do as a GCRA. And then you can see the list in public space and streetscape gets a little bit smaller because what we heard from the community and what we've learned through the process of doing this is that these areas are areas where we should really do more partnerships. And it seems like we have a lot to offer as it pertains to economic development. So corridor improvements, streetscapes, parks, things of that nature really fall into that bucket, but would probably have a little less investment from us as we suggest in this process. All right, and to show you those opportunities that were in the map, or in the list on a map, we've kind of identified them in a little different way. On the right-hand side, you can see the former redevelopment areas and those projects, how they touch each one of the projects, but showing you how we have really rebalanced the amount of projects to really allow for more work to be done in the east side to kind of catch up from where we are from the past. But again, the shaded area is the entire GCRA, which means that all the initiatives, all the things we do are applicable to those spaces. And then we started to highlight the different types of projects in different areas with these circles, such as the Heartwood Project, Cornerstone and G-Tech, Duval neighborhood improvements, the historic Heritage Trail is also circled here. And again, what we're stating here is that these are all important opportunities for us to consider in terms of our reinvestment dollars forward. Budget. And one of the things that's really important here is that we have all these ideas, we have all these projects, but they have to be paid for, right? We know the funding that's going to come, and we know that we need to leverage that to its greatest potential. And what Sarah's going to do is she's going to walk us through the old and new budget, because I know there's still a lot of confusion in terms of what we had before, in terms of those former bank accounts, and what we can have going forward. And then we'll talk a little bit about the philosophy and actually the flexibility in these types of things.
Good evening. A little shorter. There we go. So, let me just tell you that we have had an interesting time, really a time of growth, I think, as a department, as a newly formed department, trying to work with this information, work with everything that we've received, and, you know, in some ways regurgitate back, you know, this is what we heard, and making sure that the project priorities fit within the feedback received from the community. Also, we talked about different ways to approach it financially. You know, we spoke about the potential to bond, I keep calling it increment, bond the money. I'm just going to say money. Old habits die hard, right? So first, what I want to take you through is just a little bit of an explanation of old money versus new money, just to keep it really simple. So in general, we had to kind of come up with, and we meaning a team between CRA staff and budget and finance staff and the city manager's office worked on this together. And it's great to have, not that we didn't have those resources before, but we get to work even closer. Some of our colleagues, well now real colleagues in the city and other departments, and so it's been great to have that support. But in general, the way that we're thinking about the old money versus new money is this. And this is not the thinking part, I'm sorry, these are the actuals. So the old money was only funded through FY19, and remember that's the statutory funding that the city and the county were required to transfer every year by January. And then again, the main reason for making this change was that the old money had to be spent within the district from which it came. So that has significant rules around it, significant reporting around old money because we are a community redevelopment agency under the Florida statutes. Hence the reason there's an annual report in the middle of this consolidated plan because we are still required to complete that for FY19. So in general, keep this in mind that what we thought about with old money is first paying off notes. Once the math was done, there could be a potential of about $300,000 worth of savings over 10 years of interest savings in paying off the debt now. It's a very clean way to utilize the old money within the old districts and to take care of that debt. So in our assumptions moving forward, there is kind of a baseline that we'll talk about where we wouldn't pay off the debt, but I think we've already kind of realized the savings that can be achieved through doing that. There are some balances left over at the end of paying off debt, especially in College Park and downtown, I think. And so any leftover money from paying off debt or any obligations from FY19 would go towards projects, right? But still, we have to manage that in a different way. And then also we have these ongoing development agreements, which are different than loans. Loans, we can look out and see what our payment will be in 5 years. With development agreements, it's a different animal, and that's based on net present value, and you have to kind of calculate it every year based on the tax values. So it's a little different. So we would recommend paying our FY20 development agreement, or was it it would be FY19 actually, development agreement, that's incorrect, so sorry about that. FY19 development agreement payments out of the FY19 budget from those different areas, and then moving forward, the years that are left on those development agreements, which there aren't many years left, I think in the next 5 we would be done, next 4 years, would come out of the new money. I also wanted to mention that, in the proposed allocation spreadsheet, that any money after paying off debt in those districts is included in that spreadsheet. So then we move to the new money, which is a fixed contribution from the city and the county. It can be spent anywhere within the district. So those are just kind of in the brackets, the main differences between old and new. So there is not enough money to pay off the entirety of the east side debt in the old money. So the remainder of that note, if we decide to pay off the debt, would be paid out of the new money. And then everything that you see in the proposed projects and programs list moving forward will be paid out of the new money. And then if applicable, any associated interest and fees with the borrowing option. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the remainder of the development agreements, so which will be done in the next 4 years. So these are kind of the three scenarios, and we just did a quick benefit and challenges of all three options. I won't read them all, but the baseline approach is kind of the known approach. All funding is available, for projects and programs. And we're staffed for that. That's kind of the way that we're set up. Major projects could require a delayed start, and then we would obviously continue to pay the debt service. Then the second option, baseline plus pay off debt, is basically the same thing, realizing the savings of paying off the debt. And then the third would be to borrow to front load and pay off debt. And so as you'll see, some of the benefits could be jump-starting reinvestment efforts. And then some of the challenges would be potentially the staffing, right? If we are able to push forward major projects and front load them, how would we staff that? And also the possibility of future payments not being fulfilled to pay the debt, because it is an agreement that could potentially be changed. So from there, we decided to kind of look at things. And so I want to say a few words about the spreadsheet, the allocation spreadsheet in the back. It's not a budget. We're not asking you to approve the budget. It really is just a way of showing kind of the thinking around, if these are our projects that have all come forward, and we were to assign a dollar amount to them, what would it look like spread out over the 10 years based on the priorities that we're carrying? And when would it become necessary to bond if we decided to go there? When and how much? And so I know that the spreadsheet is a little much, but we felt like we needed to share it with you to kind of show how we're approaching this, because as we move forward from this meeting to community engagement and then back to the city commission, we will have to probably drill down more into those scenarios. It's 5 different spreadsheets, maybe a little bit more. Very complicated, and so the numbers on there, what we were asked to do is really look at, how would we spread these out, what would we kind of try to front load, what would be a ballpark figure, because to be quite honest, some of these are ideas that came from the community or administration, and they have not been scoped out yet. And so it's a little bit different than saying, we are going to do a streetscape between 10th Street and 13th Street on 5th Avenue. We would be able to come up with those numbers fairly easily, but when you're talking about a major project at 8th and Waldo, one has not been realized yet. And so there's things that we think we can do moving forward, and in working with administration, we kind of worked out a dollar amount that everyone thought would be sufficient to carry something forward. So it is for discussion purposes only. We made sure to kind of put that on there. I know when a spreadsheet's seen in the past, it's typically a budget spreadsheet, but really this is kind of just an allocation, a way that we can allocate the new funding and the carryover from the old moving forward with the project list that's come out of this process. So what we did, and I know that we're one district now, but I think it makes a lot of sense to all of you who have been so involved in our boards over the years to look at it this way. If you looked at the old method, and Armando, back to kind of your discussion, I think 2 meetings ago, if we took the money coming in and it was divvied up via the old split, you would see College Park at 55%, Drab, downtown, sorry, at 28%, East Side at 8%, Fifth Avenue at 9%. So that's what they all contributed. based on the way the lines were drawn, right? And so we wanted to show that so that you could see the new method and what we're able to do. So if you, basically we did the math based on the allocations in the spreadsheet. What does it look like if we were to break it up by district? And so where we are now with the projects and programs that are in the allocation spreadsheet and the funding, it looks like this. So you have basically flipping the script to where East Side would receive the majority of the contribution, downtown second, College Park third, and Fifth Avenue fourth. So I think Fifth Avenue, based on the fact that it's a much smaller area, and then also highly residential, I think those are pretty much the only two things I can say about why that area probably, in the end, when we did the math, came out at 11. But one thing I think that's not represented that I thought about while Kona was talking is that in each of these 4 areas, we have a large economic development fund. And so we know that there will be opportunities, for instance, if Seminary Lane moves forward, we would like to try to negotiate getting the streetscape completed from 10th to 13th Street. And if you remember, we did that in 2 phases. The one streetscape in Pleasant Street, right, on the Pleasant Street side, and then the next one was from 6th Street down to 10th. And so there's that last segment to finish. And so what we'd really like to do is be able to get that done while all that construction is going on if it moves forward. And so that's kind of how we're approaching some of the major corridors, and some of the areas can be handled that way, where if you can work with developers to try to say, what are you required to do by the city? And then if you were to go over and above those requirements to kind of meet the CRA streetscape standards, potentially we can participate. So I wanted to add that. We also looked at the different one. Yep. All the pie charts look the same to me. So this one looks at the former reinvestment districts over the 10-year span. So a little bit less, and then you can see Fifth Avenue and College Park about the same. So that's the overall 10-year allocation. And then also we looked at it by reinvestment objective, because it's like, where are we really placing the priority? We heard from the community and from you all that economic development was a priority. So we needed to check ourselves and say, if we're moving these projects and programs forward, where are we financially putting the lion's share of the funding? And so based on the allocations in the chart, it would be 65% economic development, community enhancements next, and public space and streetscape coming in third. I hope those helped a little bit. As Kona mentioned, we are nearing the end of the process, and so I wanted to remind you that we have tonight, and we're here to answer all the questions that you have to the best of our ability. And then tomorrow night we have our final community engagement meeting at 5:30 at the 8 King Jones Center in their multi-purpose room. And then our next commission meeting, where we'll be discussing this and taking this a step further based on what we received tonight and tomorrow night, will be March 5th. And that's a really important meeting. So if you can, get it on your calendars, and when the agenda is being made, we'll make sure to communicate where we are in the agenda and give you copies and communicate about that. On St. Patrick's Day, 3/17, we have confirmed the speaker that Kona referred to for the Love Cities, Peter Kageyama, is going to come for the unveiling, and we'll be speaking. I think it'll be a great event. We'll all be there. And really, it's just to kind of celebrate the process and celebrate this milestone, which really started a full 2 years ago. So we're excited about that. And then finally, per the new ordinance, by April 1st of every year, the city and the county are supposed to report to one another in a joint city-county meeting about the redevelopment activities from that year. And I know that, I think we sent out notice that there was a meeting where the county was getting some, or trying to get some programs approved regarding the funding that they kind of, quote, got back out of this change. I hate to say got back because it's not really the case, but negotiated out of the deal. So be aware of those dates. Let us know if you have any questions moving forward. I know that I want to open it up for questions about the proposed programs and projects and the spreadsheet. So with that, I just want to share the recommendation. Oops, I didn't even move the slide forward. Which is obviously to hear the presentation. But we want to have a good conversation around the reinvestment plan, any questions that you have, and then we do ask for your approval. Our next step is the city commission, and if there are any modifications, proposed modifications that you make, we will make sure to get those down and forward them to the commission item as well. So with that, thank you so much for your attention. I know this is a lot of information, and we're here to answer any questions.
If I could, before you conclude, I just want to give a little nod to Warren and others who were slightly visually challenged like myself with some of the small graphics, and just let you know, we have a lot. I mean, this is a lot of information. We're trying our best to squeeze it in as much as we possibly could. So definitely going forward, we'll make sure we keep that in mind.
Yeah, thank you for that. After you said that, I cringed because I thought about some slides that were coming up that had a lot of information, so we're sorry about
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think, if you don't mind, Chair, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here, but I know a little bit about PowerPoints, and I think you can expand it. You got room.
Okay.
Just think about us, because I'm splitting like the son of a
And
gun.
so am I.
And you know what? Even with me up here, I'm visually challenged too.
I mean, I can't read it. Some of this stuff I
I brought
can't.
my own.
Yeah.
No, but you can do this.
We got you covered.
We'll hang up here for questions.
Please, all right. I'm sure the board has a lot of questions. We can start just by whoever is interested, raise their hand, and if not, we can, if it looks like it's too many, we'll go around the room. So, all right.
I have a question about on the engagement timeline. So at tomorrow night is when it's Aquin Jones, right?
Yes.
So what from there is the community engagement meeting. What are you expecting to get out of that? And the reason why I ask that because you don't have a meeting after that, you go straight to the city commission. So why committee? Are you going to make a change? And if there are changes, we won't be able to see the changes before you go to the city commission. So that's my concern. I mean, because I would hate for you to have a community engagement meeting and engage the community and be like, oh, well, sorry. I mean, hate it for you if you're going to the commission meeting the next week. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So I was a little concerned about that just because if there are, and there may not be, everybody might be happy, I doubt it though. Community engagement, and then you have to look at it and go back and make some tweaks, but then it goes to the city commission before it comes back to us and you want us to approve it tonight.
Yeah, so it's the way the calendar worked out. I mean, as you know, we were asked to extend the timeline and also make some changes to the way that we're moving forward back in December. And so we were asked to provide a schedule and get X amount of community meetings and X amount of board meetings. And honestly, it's the way the dates fell. But I will tell you that what we plan to do is take forward any recommendations that come out of this board and any feedback that would significantly change what we present tonight, and make sure that it's communicated that way to the commission. Because as you know, the commission can say, we approve the plan, but we want X, Y, and Z, And so there's always an opportunity for the commission to change something. And so we're seeing that as, really that's it, just to get one more level of feedback, especially on this program and project list, because the community as a whole hasn't been invited to see that. And that's really important. And so, unfortunately, it's the way the dates fell, but, our promise to you is that we will make certain that we have, any information that would alter the plan or significantly change it or, and just kind of report back because, as Connor mentioned, we are actually going to put this stuff up that we present tonight on the online survey as well and keep it open until the commission so that we can also report that information because we want to continue to get that feedback. So it's tough, I would like to say we'd be done tonight and, the process is closed and we have this shiny book that will be approved, but the process has just organically happened, and so we'll just do our best to carry it all forward. And, you know, we've got a multitude of staff people on this as well, so we will make sure to get a lot of information down tomorrow night.
Yeah, I'd like to remind you again that the plan is a guide, right? So it's for us to use going forward. And it's basically just laying out steps to get us to where we need to be. It's not in concrete set, this is what you have to do, because if something changes tomorrow that we could benefit from, we're going to want to make adjustments. And that's why we have a GCRA board, and that's why we have a GCRA team to allow us to be able to nimbly, to move with whatever needs to happen. So every step we've taken in terms of reviews, you're the first group we come to. So you are the ones that we need to give us guidance. So if something in here doesn't resonate and you think we should change even for tomorrow night, then we can make some quick changes on the fly. We couldn't do a lot, but if there's something minor that needs to be tweaked, we want to know. And typically that's what we've done in our past meetings. So after our first review with you, we took that information and updated it before we went to the community.
All right, let's go around the table and see what else we've got.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for putting all this together. I guess one of my questions, just to get into it real quick, is with this kind of budget, this being kind of a representative budget, do the percentages that are on this line up with the percentages in these pie charts? When I'm looking at it, just kind of cursory overview, it looks like it's kind of hard to add up to nearly $4 million going into Eastside. And that's kind of one of my concerns, is that, as we get into this project, get into these things, as, you said we're quick and nimble and we can move, well, say there's not $4 million worth of Eastside projects, something more exciting comes up in the middle and we lose focus on trying to bring the change the development to Eastside that we need. Does this work out to the same types of percentages in the pie chart?
So, a couple of things to remember. This is not a budget. It's just a way of thinking through the costs that could potentially be associated with these projects and programs. And then it was an exercise in laying them out over 10 years to see how we could pull it off, right? And where there are actually negative balances at the bottom. So I don't even know if they're on here, because we didn't want anyone to think that this was like math, or a budget that we were taking forward for approval at this point. So
Yeah, do the percentages add up? Because I guess my concern is
it
that
depends on the pie chart. So if you can show me which one, I'll have our budget analyst.
the budget allocation method comparison fiscal year 20, that has the old method versus new method, with the $3.8 million going to the Eastside Redevelopment Advisory Board-ish in that area. And when we break down and look over here, I'm just on quick cursory count, there's only 6 or 7 projects in Eastside that look like they're there, and most of them are kind of, are not what are going to be the multi-million-dollar projects like Power District. And I know that's a big concern of this board, is that, we're going to lose focus.
So let me address that, and then I'll let Daniel speak to your original question. So you need to remember too that once these projects and programs kind of make it onto the list, we don't just go. Everything comes back around. Even the scoping of all these will be done with the board and with the commission, right? So as far as losing focus, what Kona said is true. You have to be nimble enough, but I think that's more within like economic development opportunities. For instance, the scenario I described where there could be a major development where we could participate in some way to make it better for the community, and it fits within the focus area of 8th and Waldo or something. You know what I mean? And I think that's the kind of nimbleness that we're talking about, not that something drops out of the sky that doesn't relate to something on the plan. You have to always go back to the fact that, does it meet the objectives, right? Does it address all the things we know that make our project successful and the vitality report? Is it the type of work that we do? And so it goes to a lot of vetting with you all, you know, and so I wouldn't worry too much about something just kind of dropping down and making us lose focus. This planning effort is just that, to give us focus, you know, for the next 2 years.
I guess my issue is that I'm looking at this draft for discussion, and it doesn't look like there's $4 million going into East Side out of it.
So, meeting, my name is Daniel Blumberg, I'm project manager over GCRA. I worked on these spreadsheets and the pie charts. So, keep in mind, this slide right here is only for FY20. And so it's only looking at the initial first year. And they are representative of the numbers off of the actual spreadsheet.
Okay.
So, as an example, ERAB, there's going to be on the left side of the spreadsheet under districts, you're going to see for the first few, 8th Avenue Water Improvements, ERAB, Cornerstone Campus, ERAB, G-Tech Management, ERAB, Eastside, Food Mobility Hub, ERAB, Job Center, ERAB. So any of those that had an FY20 dollar assigned value under that section there is part of the ERAB here. And then further down, under the economic development section, there's also pieces that are ERAB. So those are all going to add up to the number that's shown here for the FY20. Keep in mind, this is just proposed. So this is based off of a snapshot in time. So it's nothing definitive.
Yeah,
at this
I
point.
understand.
But all of the numbers on all of the pie charts do reflect off of the spreadsheets that you have.
Okay, great.
And also know that we are part of the city's overall budget process now moving forward. We actually had our first quarter meeting today. So the budget that you've seen in the past and the process that we had in the past is not going to be what it is moving forward. So just keep that in mind because we will have to present the actual budget this year for FY21 based off, you know, the decisions that are made with this.
So I'm going to clarify one more piece real quick. Again, Daniel Blumberg, GCRA. When you do see on there going down on the district, there's some that are labeled multi-district, and those that are labeled multi-district are split 4 ways. So there's 25% of that is assigned to each one of these areas.
Okay. I think that's everything. Yeah, I had a lot of
We're
other
gonna go around the
questions,
table.
No, well.
Is it on this
Okay.
specific, it's easier, I think,
Those
because everybody has questions.
Well,
Yeah, I know.
I just sit here and I add up the numbers, and it comes up to that number. He's right, when you do the
Okay,
multi-district, you have to divide that number by 4 and assign that portion to each
Okay,
side.
great.
So I just did the numbers. If you come down that 2020 column, that's just that first year's number. And so it does add up. You just have to, you just got to do the math.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, the spreadsheets actually generate these pie charts.
great.
You can't get it one way or the other.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is similar to Michael's, in the general sense. You know, we've merged all the districts into one district, and yet they're still clinging to the old lines that are there. And I think some of those lines, unfortunately, are arbitrary. And you could have projects on either side of the line that would be symbiotic, very symbiotic. And I would really hope that we didn't get into a dispute over dollars here and dollars there when we want to look at what the real impact is to the people in these districts and how they all are, as I said, symbiotic in many respects. That's what my concern is here, where we're coming up with specific fractions on these pie charts for the future. I think we have to remember that we need to put our brain power together, our good instincts and experiences and knowledge to package up a future that basically it works for the good of the entire one district, with an emphasis on where we have been less than have had less investment in the past. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not going negative on that. I'm just saying we have to be real thoughtful on how these projects play out, when they're built, the timing, what kind of opportunities we get when we have private investment coming along and we need to work to partner. I'm just looking for flexibility and creativity. That's what I'm saying. I don't want to be locked in.
Absolutely. And I think we agree. In fact, if anything, I think there was a little bit of heartburn about kind of going back to the old district method to try to show.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we received so much feedback about flipping the script, and also so many people continue to see the district that way that we felt like the information might be more digestible this way. So, but your point is well taken.
I'd like to concur. It was challenging. As a matter of fact, just to be fully transparent, we had some discussions about having all sorts of additional districts, so it really got convoluted. But the thing that was helping us was that knowing this is a way to organize the map, but at the end of the day, this is one area, this is one GCRA, we're one community. What we have in common is a lot. We have a lot in common, and one of the main things we have in common is that we're from Gainesville. It's not that we're from this specific district, because the district, as you're saying, there are arbitrary boundaries. I mean, many of us are from neighborhoods within the community, but when you ask somebody where you're from, you're going to say, I'm from Gainesville, right? So we need to really get past that, but this was really an opportunity to help us understand the math. I think we need to be very clear about that even tomorrow.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I have slight disagreements with Mendel Nielsen. I think there's a history here that we still need to know where we come from to get to where we're going. We know we have a equity problem here, and this is why we did an intergovernmental agreement with the county to see that we make some changes, some good changes. So I look at the history as kind of like a foundation to keep us accountable as we move forward, to know that, hey, we're coming from somewhere and we're trying to go somewhere. So I understand your point of symbiotic, being a symbiotic relationship, but in the past, many people would characterize it from the east side as more parasitic, in the sense that we're contributing our dollars and they're going way over there, and we're not seeing the same type of circulation of our dollars in our communities over here to help us rise up in the waters of everything that goes on in Gainesville. So I agree with the points of innovation and creativity, and that's why we're here, using that to create a more equitable future amongst the history of these communities that we're now trying to merge and bring together. I think my question has to do more with the community enhancements piece and the infill housing. I made comment last time that we saw a lot of input in terms of like affordable housing, revitalization of housing. That was like 20-something%. And the thing I want to protect is the sense of under community enhancements, that emphasis is not lost under the sense of just infill housing. And I'm wondering if there are more players that are going to be brought to the table besides housing community development that would expand opportunities and mixed housing.
It's a good question. So I think you'll see from the list that there are a few projects that remained that were on the old plan. So one is Heartwood, right? I'd be horrified if that didn't make it. And then also we have a potential for a model block program in Porters, and then we have a potential for a model block in Pleasant Street. I think the question that we're going to ask moving forward is model block the right program. So as you know, it's more of a down payment assistance type program where you have to live there for 10 years to realize the full benefit. And so we're going to ask those questions moving forward. One of the things for us is when thinking kind of staff and with our administration about what our role is moving forward, a lot is changing at the city. There's been a huge reorg. Departments are aligned differently. We're actually aligned now with, I think the way that it's going to be explained is the outward-facing departments within the city. And so we'll be working a lot more closely with housing and community development. I think one thing that's worth noting is when Heartwood got passed, we knew that that wouldn't be a solution to perpetual affordability, right? Because it's just down payment assistance. And so we are having internal discussions about how that could be realized and what our role could be in that. There had been comments about a community land trust. You know, do you do a solicitation to partner with a community land trust? Do you start one? Does the city start one itself? But those conversations are going on, and this conversation is much bigger than just our board. And so I think what we tried to do is recognize where there was already opportunity and some work that was done, knowing that because the conversation has become much more complex and there are more players involved, moving forward we need to kind of define what our role will be and maybe how we will deliver those. So I don't know if that answers your question in full, but that's kind of the thinking.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that projects like Heartwood isn't the only project.
Yeah, we totally agree. One thing that we may want to consider as a team is, I know from my professional experience, we've seen a lot of developers sort of slide into the affordable housing sort of track as a specialty. I'm sure that there are many developers here that do housing. Market rate housing is very different than affordable housing. Market rate housing is also very different from even mixed affordable housing. So many municipalities use certain mechanisms to kind of force that sort of inclusionary zoning and things of that nature. That takes time to go through the process of, you know, changing zoning, et cetera. But where I've seen success is communities who have actually sought out these types of developers that they know provide high quality product that's affordable. I mean, that's where the rubber really meets the road. We have to go and find those partners because as an organization, we don't have the bandwidth to develop affordable housing, period. You have an affordable housing arm here, but they will manage, they don't develop projects, do they? Or they do, but not on a regular basis to some extent. So to some extent, so it would be in our best interest to partner with them, but then also bring other players to the market so that we can really move the needle. Because otherwise, we can talk about this a lot. And at every single one of our meetings, people mention housing. At every single one of our meetings. So it's challenging because there's only so much that GCRA can do. One of the things we can do is promote good affordable housing, good development, things that support our overall objectives.
And Mr. Murray is here, our Assistant City Manager, and it looks like he'd like to say a few words.
I would just like to say, as it relates to affordable housing, the county or the city can't be the only entity. They can't be the catalyst for all of them. It can be only one entity in that development. The city is continually going to be looking out for strategies how to develop affordable housing. I can tell you right now, we're getting more inquiries about senior housing in that community than I've ever seen before. I know a couple of projects that people have already asked us about. We're going to continue to strive to look at other types of models, even non-profit organizations that can help reduce gentrification, those types of things. We'll continue to take a look at that. And so we will be happy. We'll continue to work with the CRA. I don't call them CRA, DRA. They're part of the city. That's what they are. They're part of what we're going to be doing. And we're going to be working to do that. We're going to look at ways of how to build some mixed-use housing as well as some apartment complexes that we need to use in our community. One of the things that they're looking at the housing strategies is looking at one tool that will fit every tool. So we're going to have to use very tools in the toolbox. If you have a toolbox, you know you can't use a wrench for everything. You got to have a screwdriver. You got a few other things, and that's what we're going to do as it relates to housing. And we welcome your input and feedback. We're going to have continue to have meetings. And one of the things, just as she's mentioned, the housing strategy is going to be fluid. It won't be something that's going to be good today. It will constantly change.
I'm sorry. All right, thank you. Mr. Merritt, Member Merritt, you have any questions?
Well, thank you for the presentation, but my own question is in relation to the job center. Is career resource still available, or is this going to be a new establishment to aiding people in acquiring job skills and employment?
So I would say it's yet to be fully fleshed out. It's something that really has come through the city and through the commission. We have been approached, as you know, by also members of the community who are looking to do something like this, but internally there has been ideas about a project that the city would do. And so administration thought that this would be a really good way for us to participate in helping make this happen. I think the desire is that it be in East Gainesville. I think the notes that we put were really just about providing an avenue for citizens to acquire in-demand job skills, but nothing has been defined yet. So that would be something that we come back to you on. And it is just conceptual at this point.
Okay. All right, thank you.
My only question is, it seems like we went with like a front-loaded approach on this. The first 2 years is like 7-8 million, and then 26 million.
Yeah, it's
And
kind of
then
hybrid.
I just see a lot of dashes at the end where things could come up. I thought we kind of voted on like more of a mixed or suggested a more.
So again, this was our first pass at just, this is potentially the amount of money that we should set aside for these initiatives and kind of the years in which, as a group, it was thought that it should rest, right? And so this will be reworked because obviously if we, well, also I think we wanted to really identify when would the money be needed as well, right? First. So we had some questions to kind of answer before moving forward into the actual, here's the math, here's what the budget will look like and all that. So hope that helps.
So this is just kind of like just the first draft.
It's a worksheet, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the desire is still the hybrid approach, but
Yeah.
we have to show where the monies could be allocated depending on that process. So in a
Like
hybrid,
in the third year, we don't. There's like the 10 million for the 8s and Waldo. Is that like we have a plan that day or that year that we've already talked to people?
it's interesting about that because that project hasn't been fully scoped out. It hasn't been designed, so we can't allocate the money early because it won't be ready.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of pushed a little bit. I mean, that's sort of the logic where we are right now, but
Yeah.
it's a lot to go
And
through.
also, if you think about 8th and Waldo, there's the street itself, which is FDOC, right? And there's going to be some issues with that. And trying to move something like the streetscape forward, right? It's just not what we've done in the past. But thinking of the right-of-way around the intersection, think of all the properties that are owned by the city right there on Safety City campus and MLK. That portion, just the properties that are adjacent to the roadway are in the district, and then Citizens Field is in the district. We're also looking across the street, potentially there could be acquisitions there as well in order to try to make something bigger happen. And so I think that's kind of why you see the big number is because there's a lot of opportunity, and as it gets scoped out, we'll realize, what's realistic and then what our part is in it.
Ever thoughts?
Okay. I've been trying to put this all together. I didn't see anything on this in the Spring Hill area between the Cotton Club and Cave. There is a community other than the Powder District up in that area that can use some, that should be considered as well. I don't see anything in here where Spring Hill is included.
Okay. Thanks
You
for
just
bringing that to our
have,
attention.
pardon me?
Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Okay. And then as I was going down this spreadsheet, you have construction manager. We're going to pay millions to consultants and construction managers, where I think we should use that money for affordable housing or something. Because if you start at the ERAB, at Heartwood, you have construction manager, at risk builders. You have to pay all these people out of the dollars that you have assigned. So once you pay all of those consultants and personnel, I don't believe in spending our tax dollars paying that much money to consultants. We have a staff that's capable, I guess, or you could contract it out, but you're getting all these people to come in, and that's going to be millions of the dollars that's included up there in this budget. Is there any way we can work around that, or do something other than paying consultants all of that money? Because if you look at all the line items, you have them listed where you're going to hire this person and that person, and they're expensive. So how do we? Is there any way around that?
So yes and no. Just remember that the numbers represent a lot more than what's listed here. You know, for instance, with Hartwood and Cornerstone, we have condo association and homeowners association fees that need to be paid until the bulk of the project is sold. So it's not, we tried to list typical types of things that would fall under, you know, that project. So keep that in mind. We don't know what that CM at risk is going to cost as of today. So just want you to know that. The second thing is we are going in a new direction, and in fact our new leadership really supports departments within the city actually doing design and potentially construction of our projects. And so that is a new model. We have not done that before. And so moving forward, we have kind of a new matrix of how we're to think about these projects. Number one, can we handle the project in-house as a CRA? Because we are a city department now, and we have other departments that do the types of work that we do. So we're to think about that. If we can't, then potentially one of our partner departments would end up managing the project for us. Same thing with design. If it's something like a streetscape that Public Works could design and has the capacity to do, then we are to let them do it first, and only if they're unable to will we seek out consultants.
Well, when you go before the commission, and I think you said it's on the 5th of March, I wish that would be one of the bullet points that you would make to the commissioners, that we would try to use in-house people instead of hiring all these consultants and architects that we have on staff here at the city. So that those dollars can be used for something else, in my opinion.
Okay, can I add to that?
Yeah,
Because this, I don't know, it's time yet.
Oh yeah, let me just say one more thing. I mean, there will be probably compensation for their work. Not that it would be free.
No.
Because they are not currently set up to handle this type of work. And so what we'll be working through is if we are going to have partner departments manage projects for us, then, you know, how does that happen internally, right? So they'll probably need to hire additional staff.
Okay. So to give you one example, the New York City Parks Department is a larger employer of landscape architects in our entire country, because they self-perform a lot of their projects. Every once in a while, they'll go out and bring in a consultant, if it's a specialty or if it's beyond their capacity. So I know you're aware of this, but in projects, you have hard costs, the hard construction, the wood, whatever you need to build with. You have soft costs, fees, permitting, paying for expertise to get the project done, paying contractors, not only to build it, you know, to bring their people in, that's soft costs. To be paid their fee for profit, again, that's a soft cost. This is part of development. And what I really appreciate about this budget, it's an all-in budget. It's showing you everything. And that's why it's important that we hear these questions, because if the city wants to take a stance to make sure that the dollars stay here in Gainesville, we need to know that so that we can recommend that, because there are experts within this community. The question is capacity. Do you have enough people here to do the work? And even as Sarah was saying, we're not staffed right now to execute these projects. It would mean hiring more people, which those soft costs will go somewhere. So it would be hiring more people, paying insurance, et cetera, and able to have the staff to do what you need.
How many people do you have on staff for CRA?
We have 11 FTEs.
Thank you.
It's a very good question. Thank you for asking.
Member Dixon?
Okay, I've got questions and comments. First of all, I just want to be clear, what we're being asked to approve tonight is this book as a draft, right? Not the table, not the presentation, but this book, right? And as I look at that, I think there's a lot of good stuff in here, but I think if I'm reading it right, the real plan portion, the forward-looking portion of it, starts on about page 70.
Yes.
And it's really kind of the tail end, is the meat of what would guide us going forward, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so when I look at that, so if this is our guidance, and then later we'll get into these details of projects, where's the guidance in this plan that helps me have these conversations about which projects we prioritize? How does this plan, as you've written it, help me decide project A is a higher priority than project B?
So I think the exercise that we went through was the mapping exercises that you saw. Going back to what are the priority reinvestment areas, what were the percentages that were assigned to those, and then how do we budget across the 10 years to kind of mirror those priorities. And so,
Well, I mean, it started here, basically. What you see here are areas, but they're also projects too, in a sense. And so what we first did was we analyzed all these former redevelopment areas and the projects that were ongoing or completed, et cetera. And we used that to present to the community, and the community then told us, well, based on what we've done in the past, this is what's important to us. And then we took that information and brought it forward towards these sort of areas and actual different types of objectives to get us all the way to, stop here, criteria to help us know, we heard lots of ideas. There were so many projects. And many of the projects, as I may have noted before, are not new. Most of them are projects that we started before with great ideas. They just need a push to get forward. There are projects that were conceptualized in parts of our community that just never were able to be done because we didn't have funding. So we use this sort of internal check to ask ourselves, okay, based on the big bucket of projects we have, this big list, why are they important? What's really going to get us there? So we would highly advise that we utilize this as a little bit of a check to help. But I think what's important at the end of the day is we want to make sure that the projects or the initiatives, the programs hit our objectives, they meet the mission, they support community, because there are a lot of them too.
Okay, so I think one of the things that I struggle with a little bit too is I think as I read this, objectives and initiatives get used sort of interchangeably. They're
Yes,
the same three things, right?
We want to be very careful about that, yeah.
And then, I looked at what you put in here for measures of success, and I appreciate that because that was something I actually asked for, kind of, how do we know that these projects are getting us where we collectively think we need to go, wherever that is, however we've stated it in here. And as I read these measures, and I'll just take the public space and streetscape on page 83, just for an example, but I think you could do this exercise with all of them. So basically the measures of success is how well have the initiatives been implemented, basically. And then the initiatives include things like bike facilities and the green infrastructure and so forth. But I don't, somehow that still feels to me like it's missing something. If I were to look at a project and say, okay, well, it's providing, you list, bike repair stations and rental bike stations, and that's great stuff. But I'm not sure that I would consider a project and say, well, does it meet the initiative? Well, the initiative says, yeah, I'm going to provide rental bike stations, therefore that's a good project. I think what I would like to see is something in the measures of success that goes back to some of the conversations we had at the very first meeting when we met, and we talked about things like we wanted projects to support private reinvestment, and we talked about like how streetscape initiatives think South Main was the example we used, streetscape initiatives per private reinvestment, and you see what's happening with the businesses up and down that street since the CRA made that investment. And I'm not seeing in here where that's kind of a check mark.
Right.
You know, or does the project accommodate or facilitate mobility choice? So does it give people some mobility? If we do those streetscape projects, do something on those blue lines on the map, is it actually providing something for people that isn't there today? And is that something actually valuable? And how do we define whether or not it's valuable? It's probably another measure of success. I'm just still not really seeing that kind of criterion here that puts enough meat on the bones for me to be able to even talk about project lists later. So I think that I'm still missing, I'm still looking for that. I'd like to see the objectives and measures really define what this group thinks is the why. Why would we do these projects? And then, so that's kind of my bigger comments, and then just kind of a little more down in the weeds. I think, the 2% to streetscapes and public spaces, I think is a little low. I understand in the surveys that that was the lowest ranked, I think, in the surveys. But I also think, there is this overlap with economic development. And so, we need to just think a little bit more about that. And we're thinking about the specific streetscapes and public space initiatives. They may actually have economic implications and community implications. So I still feel like we need to kind of sort that out a little bit more. And my last comment, as I looked at some of the projects in the book and also on the table, I see several things that are planning oriented. The downtown master plan is in there, and then there in the pink in the spreadsheet, there are some projects that talk about need assessment, planning, analysis, and it doesn't get us to construction in the 10-year window. So I'm concerned too. I want to make sure that we implement maybe more than we plan, because 10 years is going to go fast. And I think we have enough projects today that we can spend this money 10 times. So I'm not feeling the need to do a lot of planning with this money. There may be some, and I'd like to hear more about some of the planning projects that are in here. But I think that's something else I'd like to be really careful on.
Member Bush? We're just going around the table.
So most of my comments have already been shared by other members here, so I'll be brief. I'm glad that this is not part of what we need to approve tonight, and I appreciate that you're trying to show us the path forward, but I think there's a lot of questions and assumptions here, looking at why 22, and why is everything coming online in 22, or not everything, but a significant portion. This basically has 8th Avenue and Waldo having the largest share of any just one project funding. I don't know that I've heard that from this board as a recommendation at this point, so I think some of what's here is a little premature to be, really approved. So I'm glad that this is not. The other comment just on this is that some of these things don't seem like the others, like the Midtown Policing, for instance. I don't know, what that has, why that's in here. GTEC management, I think there's probably a programmatic aspect of GTEC. I don't know what, building improvements and facility management entails, but those things seem unlike the other things to me when I look through the spreadsheet. So in terms of just general comment and feedback, I agree. I had a note that I think that the percentage currently allocated toward public space and streetscapes is very small, to the extent that it's not really an objective. So if we're looking at $1.4 million out of $75 million over 10 years, to me that's not a real objective. We're not funding it as an actual objective, so maybe some consideration of, increasing that share for public space and streetscapes if it's a priority. If it's not, then let's not have it let's not have it in there, right? So those are kind of in general my comments. Just one other thing, because you're asking for some maybe potential quick changes before it goes out. And I mentioned this last time. I could see if the board has any other support for this. But I'd really, under economic development initiatives, would really like to get away from talking about business recruitment incentives. I think we need to broaden that language to business development so that it can include expansion for existing business. We know recruitment policies tend to not work. And so, leading our economic development initiatives with this one, I think that it's really narrowly focused. And unfortunately, it's first on the list because it's alphabetized, it looks like. But it's the very first one that I saw again. So again, if we need to make a motion to any of that effect, I'd be happy to try and float that when the time comes. But I'd really like to have us think more broadly about what we're doing to support businesses, not just in terms of recruitment. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Blount?
I'd like to see continuing great emphasis on housing and on affordable housing. But I think this group should show some thinking and push that to the commission. We need to be pushing for needed policy changes. A great example, inclusionary zoning. Something that really to make really transformative change. We're slogging along, dragging the same old dead horses around like it's going to make a difference. And on a minor note, I also want to apologize and I have to leave for a rehearsal, but I want to make a minor note. Just like bringing in consultant after consultant shows a tendency to sling money around, the word draft across every page means essentially this is a throwaway. Black and white and staple would have been just fine at a fifth or less the cost to do this. It would demonstrate frugality.
Yeah, thank you for this presentation. Lots of really good stuff. Actually, my first take actually mirrored perfectly what Ms. Dixon was saying around not being exactly clear about kind of metrics for the effectiveness over a 10-year span. If the original kind of concept that I'm reading is this idea of taxable value growth, I mean, is that like the objective metrics we're using to judge if in like 5 years or 10 years this has been able to bring equity and opportunity to the east side of town? I love the fact that I see a lot of kind of qualitative things around community, around stuff that's true to Gainesville, but like I said, just kind of this like kind of basic, like, is this actually meeting our goals, or are we just checking boxes? That's kind of my exact take on it. So, but thank you. I mean, this is a beautiful presentation.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I really have no questions. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Turner Evans?
Yeah, so I was just looking at, I don't think my mic's on, but under priority objectives, so 21.7% is focusing on housing and housing revitalization. So it actually goes into, market rate housing, workforce price points, and really the mixture of both. And so I was just kind of looking at this document here, and it really just specifically has Heartwood, and then it has like the residential paint program. So being that that's primarily just paint, essentially, and maybe contractors kind of doing this work, can that be changed to maybe incorporate, some rehab projects so that, those houses can be more up to par and still raise those property values? Because I didn't see a lot of other plans with housing.
Okay. Mr. Gomez, you have to step out.
So hearing a lot of the comments from a lot of colleagues around the table, I heard Kona start off with the statement of saying any said changes that need to be made, and this with respect to our co-chair, that if we make an idea or if there needs to be any changes made, we're the first to be brought back to it. We're the first to know. We're the first group that it should be brought back to. And I think what Stephanie was pointing out was the timeline. Well, timelines are fluid and they can be meant to be changed. And I think that if we had any foresaid change that need to be made, it's nice to hear us say it that we're the first group. But in reality, is that true? It doesn't appear to be. The other thing that I wanted to do was, I think Mr. Palmer's, at a cursory glance, was, and I heard Mr. Blumberg, and I don't know if it's just stuff being thrown out, but I want to throw out something, Stephanie, this kind of correlates. They say that we're the first to come back to it. There's been many things that we've thrown out to it, and I'm going to point out a couple of them tonight, that if they were to be changed, we're not seeing it here. And I believe what people do and not what they say. If that was the case, there's been a few things, and I want to point back to it. Last meeting, when some of you were here, some of you weren't here, we talked about making synergistic projects. That was actually voted on. We talked about having that come back, having something, for an example, for some of you that weren't here. The infinity line was brought up, and I said that was kind of a cursory view of the infinity line. I took the opportunity myself to say, we're missing something here. I said a synergistic project, because Kona brought up the fact that if we went up and down the roadway, I think one of the slides was in blue, it's going to be the streetscape and all that other good stuff, $1.4 million, we're going to do it. If it was a synergistic project and it was streetscape and we were building it, that's like a green line, a green belt. Anybody that's been to Atlanta, for example, obviously not a city our size, but they did 2 in 1. They not only built a green belt, which this community loves. If you like bike riding, you like doing things in trails and things like that, we can incorporate that also with economic development. It makes perfect sense. I even said since, and I think Member Bush and Member Dixon even commented to the fact that the thing about Waldo Road is if you go up and down it, it looks the same, it looks old. For those people that have been here 30, 40, 50, 60 years, like members of my family that have been here, it looks the same. Come on, when you go back to the Thriftway, the IGA, the Lowe's that used to be there. Heck, I mean, if some people might remember the In and Out, right? I mean, we could go all day. And then I heard one of Member Nielsen say the lines are arbitrary. But I think what was a good point to be made about the lines being arbitrary, I know what he meant by that, obviously. But Member Mitchell's point was made, was that there's a lot of history here that we must remember. This is not a question, this is a comment, because I hear you all saying the rhetoric about we're the first group, but I don't really feel that that's the case. And I'm saying this is why. If indeed the history is not being taken into account here. Kona, when I spoke to you 2-3 meetings ago, we had a negative 3.3% return. Here's how history repeats itself, just like this. It's not what you do, it's what you say. If I count 6 projects in here, it's not the amount of money that we're dropping into a project. That's kind of here or there. It sounds great, we're dropping $8 or $10 million in there, right? It's not just the money you drop in, it's the actual projects. If I'm building X projects that actually are going to bring something in return on my investment to the tune of what College Park is, to the tune of having real investment, that makes sense. If I'm slapping paint here and there, putting up shrubbery and trees and making people feel good, that's not going to get a return, folks. What's the value of a tree or shrub? Aztec grass might be, what, $5? That's why we got a 3% return coming. So I guess to me, this slaps like a slap in the face, because when this board was reconstituted and reorganized, the county said, hey, College Park, and this is exactly what they said, word for word. Go back and watch the meeting. Commissioner Byerly said it, Commissioner Hutchinson said it, Ken Cornell said it, we can go down the list, folks. They said, hey, why are we going to keep putting money into the CRA when we're saying, hey, College Park is not a blighted area. It was at one time, it's not. But we have other areas that are being left to the fray. So I guess the question becomes is, if we continue old behaviors of what we were doing before, so this is where the lines are not arbitrary. If we continue with past behaviors or the same routine, the same thing, we're going to get the same result, negative 3% return. And you're going to come back to us and we're going to say, but history was forgotten. And so just to make this, because I remember Member Fox and I think Member Seawright, Armando gets passionate. I'm not an angry black guy, okay? But what I am is, I'm not going to be apologizing for being passionate about a community, because we all live here. And to Member Mitchell's point is exactly, it comes off parasitic. And sometimes it doesn't mean to, but it comes off very patronizing and how people tend to look at things. Because I agree also with Mr. Palmer and Jacob when it comes down to making sure that we invest in our downtown. We can really make an impact when we invest in our downtown, where there's where we can have the maximized housing, which we can prove, and we can have investment in areas that truly need it. Because, you know, Kona, if we were looking at projects like whether it is, we're not necessarily meant to build housing or whether we want to play the fray. I'm not going to get into the buzzword, as the assistant city manager was saying about affordable, mixed use, whatever, or inclusionary zoning. But here's what we do know. We took an area that was off the tax rolls. Over 51% of this city is off the tax rolls. Facts. And we took an area that was off the tax rolls. This CRA did that. And we put Heartwood, which is now going to have things to invest in dollars. We have many areas, if we look around our downtown, that could use much more dense housing, could use much more dense development. What I'm asking for us to do is reach deep. Sure, we can talk in platitudes, we can talk in phrases and things that sound good, whether, you know, what, all those things. But at the end of the day, I agree with Mr. Brandon when he said earlier. I'm not necessarily interested in what was done before, but I also agree that there was a lot of things that a lot of you, I listen to you. I'm listening to all of my colleagues. And actually something Ling said a few meetings ago, Armando, we're just getting started. I remember him saying that. He's actually right. And that's why I needed to listen and do a lot more listening and not just talking. So I'm not coming off like I think one of them tried to infer I was the angry black guy. I'm not. But I am not going to apologize for being passionate about this. But what I am going to say is, you all are saying to us that we matter. You all are saying to us we're the first. Well, it's nice to hear you say that. It's another thing for it actually to be followed through on. Because I can assure you, we had that conversation. Member Bush, Member Dixon can attest to that. When we had that conversation about synergies, I didn't see that tonight. I didn't even see an alluding to it, because one thing that this city I know is focused on right now is not just affordable housing, it's also race and equity. And the first part of the race and equity is racism when it comes to this. And when you value what people do, we can tell you what you value by what's in your budget. Just throwing 55% a number that sounds great, it's also what's in the meat. I think several years ago, a president said, where's the beef? Where's the beef? Because right now, all I'm seeing is a few paint here, a few paint there, and that ain't gonna do it. Sorry. So for me, I guess the solution would be is if this timeline is not conducive to where because I'm not gonna vote to support this tonight. I'm just not, because if some of us, whether it be metrics, some of you all express some uncomfortability. I agree. I couldn't agree more. Because we owe it to the governing body that's going to look at this, we owe them to give it our best. And I don't think this is our best. When we had projects that came forward, like an Infinity Line or other projects that we need to get our best, we deserve, the governing body, the representative people deserve our best. And I don't think that we have that here tonight. I'm not, that is not an aspersion to say that staff is doing a bad job. I just think we're almost there, but I think we could do better. And I want us to dig deeper and say that, because I want something that shows downtown development, really showing something investing in our downtown, really truly investing in our downtown. Something that's going to meet what the county commission and what the city said, which was going to be addressing of urban blight, urban decay. Guess what? The Power District is not urban decay. Urban decay is what you see over in this area. We could talk about urban decay. College Park is not urban decay. And our reinvestment needs to be in our downtown, in our areas. But right now, I don't think we're giving it our best. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Debbie, do you have a response or acknowledgement or
There's
anything?
a lot, so I didn't know if
Yeah.
you wanted us to wait till the end. I've tried to take
Well,
notes.
you've gone to each individual and kind of answered their question. So if there's an answer, part of what Mr. Gomez's question was, by all means say it. If you just say it, I got you, I wrote it down.
Yeah, I'd love to respond because I appreciate your passion. People don't have passion, it means they don't care. So it's important that you guys are in it, right? You're all in, right? There are projects up here. There are ideas. Are there things that are over the top, wild, sort of transformative projects? No. Frankly, no. There aren't. There are solid ideas, solid projects that we know can work in the market. Does it mean that we shouldn't dream big and try some big ideas? No, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't dream big. We should dream big. So if you have ideas, if there's something in your mind you think would really take us over the top, we want to hear it. I mean, we do. if it's not in your mind and you're encouraging us to bring forth big ideas that we may or may not be able to afford, we would certainly do that as well. We've done that in the past. And I'm not trying to challenge you. I'm trying to let you know that we first of all, we do hear you loud and clear. There is a lot in this package. There's a lot of information. And frankly, I know we're all busy, and there's a lot to digest. And to ask you to approve this as is not fair, and that's not what we're doing. What we're asking you to do is to give us direction, to approve it with comments so we can keep the train moving. Because for us to do a hard stop, I mean, that's just, the wheels are falling apart. So in the spirit of progress, we're writing a lot of things down. We're taking in as much as we possibly can. We're going to take those notes into consideration. We're going to add what we can add. If there's something that doesn't work, we're going to tell you why it doesn't work. But we need to know. That's the purpose of this board. If you don't tell us, who's going to tell us? I mean, simple as that.
I think for me, Kona,
Yes.
to be completely frank,
Please, always.
to be completely frank, it's moving for progress for the sake of progress is not progress. To go through the motions just to go through, we've been down that path. We historically have a way to measure that, what we get from that. We always talk big, and what this community tends to do in certain areas, when it comes to that, is go small. So progress for the sake of progress is not progress. And I'll give you an example. We've had and I'm not beating up on you, but I'm saying we've had a dispensation of time that we've gone through to say we're giving you feedback, and is that relative to what some of us have communicated? Not all of us, but for just me. And for me, and I'm only going to speak for me, is I kind of feel like it's just rebuffed or ignored. And the proof is in the pudding. It's not what you do, not what you say, it's what you do. For example, those circles tell me a whole lot. It tells me that certain communities matter more than others. And when we talk about arbitrary lines, well, it's kind of like, it's not made up. This is tangible. We can call it a draft, but this is what somebody is going to present forward. Somebody said, this is what we're going to present to the city commission. They're going to say to Mr. Feldman, Mr. Murray, you know what, this is our best and this is what we're going to go do. And then that governing board is going to say, well, we voted on it, guys, so we support it. Well, guess what? No, we don't really. Because if you all were listening to us, that wouldn't be that. I'm sorry. So it's not what you're saying, it's what you're doing.
Okay, thank you. I got a couple of comments. First, I want to say thanks to everybody that worked hard to take what's really $1 billion worth of stuff and put us in some kind of a format that we can look at. An observation is this sheet has really created a lot of confusion and frustration tonight, and I'm hearing that it's not even part of the approval. And that's going to have to be real clear before we go forward. So this isn't part of what you're asking us to approve.
No.
I do have a couple of comments. It goes with Member Bush's comments. G-Tech management, policing, landscape maintenance. There's a whole lot of stuff in here. It sounds like city budget that all of a sudden the GCRA is asked to pick up. And I would just ask you to look at anything like that and maybe scrub that out or come back with a reason why that would be included.
I believe those are only 19 and 20. That's old stuff.
I'm just talking about what's on the list. It's in here on the list.
It's on there. I
going
think it
forward.
just terminates at the end of 20.
So the other part is, if this isn't on the list, I'm not sure the pie chart should be on the list in this document. Just because this document, right now, it is linking these two, and they probably shouldn't be there. I like it all the way up to here. I mean, I think it's a good representation of what I heard in the community. I think you've done a good job of collecting it. I realize that we have, the circles do mean things and have areas, but I also know from sitting in the meetings, that's where people, our constituents, are the people that are in our community said this was important to them. So I do appreciate all that's gone here. I would look to delink these things. And maybe you want to spend a couple minutes talking about what the step from this to this is for this group, because this group's now concerned about what is on here, because this is what really informs what's going on, what builds something in your neighborhood or not in your neighborhood and makes a difference. And whether it's got synergy, whether it's leading, leveraging, or supporting. And I think that's important to know in here. So I don't know if you could give us an idea how this, if this were to be approved as the plan going forward as a concept, without the project list on it, which it doesn't have, is not part of it, how do we get to that? What are your thoughts?
So I would pay attention to the project list, because that is what we're taking forward, with any recommended changes. It's the funding that we'll have to come back with. So keep those separate. It was not staff's desire to show the spreadsheet because, as I said, it was kind of just a way for us to try to start scoping out and figuring out how you accommodate this over 10 years, but we were asked to include it. So we did. And then there are a lot of items on there. Midtown policing, for instance, started in College Park, but it was supposed to be in the old CRA model, you could fund special policing efforts for up to 3 years. Since that, we've had the request from the city manager to just fund overtime costs in Midtown. And I think it's for $200,000 until that runs out. So it's a way to help try to meet an immediate need. So there are things that you have to remember that when we come back and we do our best to base everything on the community feedback that was received, that we do have an internal work group that we work with who has the ultimate say over what ends up before it goes to the city commission. And so you'll see there's an effort there was a planning effort that Ms. Bush mentioned. So that's one that we're currently funding, the downtown master plan, and have been asked to fund, but we're not managing that. So as I mentioned, there's a reorganization going on, and our role is changing a little moving forward. And to be honest, we have not fully realized what that will look like. And all we have, so far is formal communication through memorandum. And so I think there's a lot more that we're going to learn about how our work is viewed and what our role will be moving forward. And so we are just learning about that as well. And so if it seems a little bit awkward, it's because we don't see the full picture yet either. When you get a new leader and different priorities, we're doing our best to kind of accommodate that new direction, but try to keep it ground truths in the work that's been done, because we don't draw those lines. We don't draw those circles. That is based on data received. So, our best effort was to try to make sure that the projects and programs that were being prioritized made it in, through the community engagement process and through working with you all. And then in the end, we present that internally, and some make it and some don't. So, I would say if you have specific recommendations on specific line items, we're happy to carry those forward and have those conversations.
So I'm going to go back again, because that's not what I heard when Ms. Dixon asked the question. This and this are supposed to be bound together
Yes.
and go as one unit.
Let me address that next.
I mean, that's what you're asking us to prove, this whole entire package.
No. So it's the plan, and I realize
Which
now
one's the
that
plan?
the plan document.
The book.
That one. The book.
Okay.
In the draft form.
I get it. I'm trying to figure, this to me is where the controversy comes
Yeah,
in.
we're not asking for approval of that. That was just to show
Okay.
you an
So I
exercise
wanna
that
make
we went
sure.
through internally. I do want to speak to GTEC too, because that came up a few times. So we're set to close on our building this month. And then we're working towards moving it over there in April. So I think I mentioned before that the EDA funding is paid off, or the mortgage is paid off by the city this year in December. And so we're looking at, how to reposition that. I think in our minds, a lot of the programs that we want to run, economic development programs that are yet to be developed. So we've only had 2 in the past. And so we're looking to expand and maybe sunset. because the two that we have haven't been, highly successful. But some companies have utilized them. But, understanding what the community wants to see and helping develop small, local, diverse businesses and grow companies that are here, we'd be looking to, come up with programs that help support those efforts, right? And so I think what you'll see in those buckets where it says like economic development, there are projects and programs yet to be designed, to answer your question. And GTech, since we'll be housed there, has a lot of opportunity to be expanded in a new and different way. There are a lot of really viable companies there. I would say that as an incubator, it's been very successful, but then you have some companies that have been there a really long time. They're not incubating, it's their permanent office. So, we're looking to, throughout this next year, really examine how that's working and not working. It's also a 20-year-old building that has basic needs. So we're looking at a building needs assessment of what needs to be done there to kind of bring it up to code and the ADA standards, and just very simple things. So there's money for that. There's money for our build out in there of our space. And then, thinking about repositioning it all together, potentially in FY22. So in our mind, it's a way to kind of bring together a lot of these different programs and efforts into one community space, which can be repositioned to serve the community better.
I have a couple of questions, and then we might have something, trying to put something together, might be able to go in the form of a motion. We'll see. My first question, though, is there any ability or appetite for another meeting before the commission meeting, which will be next week?
That's my question.
I guess is there ability? That's a staff question, and if there interest, that's.
And ability means that you'd like to see a response to the comments that we had tonight.
Correct.
And the ones they'll get tomorrow night at the workshop.
Right.
And anything else that comes in from the survey while it's still.
And is there any way we could, Mr. Chair, is there any way we could not, you cannot present before the city commission on the 5th and postpone it until a later date?
Is that possible?
Is that set in stone?
That would be the
2
second
weeks after the 5th.
What's that?
So by per the ordinance, it has to be done by the end of March.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so we have the unveiling event planned on the 17th. I'm not sure what the meeting is after the one on the 5th. I just don't have my calendar in front of me.
It's the 19th.
19th, so it would be after the unveiling.
I did. I had another thing. I just wanted to kind of throw out to the board. And I had kind of jotted these things down after our first discussion and never really had a chance to present them to the board. But our very first meeting, we talked a lot about kind of what people wanted to get out of this, or they wanted the projects to produce. And I jotted down 5 things, and I just wanted to see if it captured what people were thinking. One of the first things we talked about was spurring private reinvestment. There was a lot about that. Our very first discussion about people who wanted to do projects that was sort of catalyst for other things, for private investment. There's a lot of discussion about filling gaps in the community fabric, and that came out in the workshops too. And I was thinking, like, in terms of affordable housing, mobility. At the workshops, people also talked about banks and other services, healthcare, and so on. We talked about having visible and impactful change. One of the things that people would really notice, like Depot Park. We talked a lot about Depot Park as kind of the embodiment of the kind of project we'd like to do. Accomplishing something that no one else would do, and that was a conversation about, let's not do something that Public Works could do or the police department could do, but let's do something that's unique to the mission here. And the last one was really the synergy projects. I had written it down originally as leveraging assets, but I think to me, it's kind of the same thing. So you're doing projects that are, that have some synergy with things that might be a Open Spaces project, or it might be a Public Works project, or a public-private something. So I kind of jotted down those 5 things from our first discussion. And I guess what I'm when I asked the question about, what kind of criteria would be used to evaluate projects going forward, those are the kind of things I had in my mind that I just don't see in there anywhere. I just wondered if that resonates with anybody else and what's missing.
That's one of my biggest issues is that measurable success. That's the hang up I'm still having.
I think
that's the basic rule of goal setting is make them specific, measurable, achievable, realistic.
Before it gets watered down, I want to really clarify what I meant by synergistic projects too as well.
Okay.
Because before that gets watered down, I mean, obviously, I'm not necessarily for a synergy, and I was giving a perfect something that was analogous to it. We had a project where Cohen brought it up earlier with the blue lines of streetscape. So the streetscape project, something that would be a synergy, was Mr. Gill brought a project for us at the last meeting about Infinity. Something that was synergistic would be we have a project that's also for 8th and Waldo. Well, if we're talking about revitalizing the streetscape synergistically, and we're working on 8th Avenue, it just kind of makes good sense. We could do 2 for the price of 1. We could just do them together. That was just something that was analogous. What I don't want that to get watered down is I do agree with private investment, but really growing the economy and having economic investment, which is what we're supposed to be doing.
Right.
And so, for me, I don't want that to get lost in the fray.
Okay.
Would staff mind speaking more towards measurable success and kind of, especially like quantitative metrics?
I did have some.
You have more comments?
Yes, and I'll make them brief.
All right.
Because for me, where I am right now, Member Dixon, I guess for me, I just really have a problem with, I know we got to be done by March, but I can't in good faith just send this the way it is now. I can't. And so I am just not comfortable. I know that it's wanting to rush. I just think whether it's certain, I would like to make sure we're really being heard and have some really good feedback, because I don't remember Palmer is right now, and I'm hearing some others on the board, but my level of comfortability is I'm not comfortable sending this to the governing body. And so I move that we not approve this tonight, and at least until we can get better feedback from the organization and meetings tomorrow night, and then we can bring that back, something that makes sense, that is clear, it's not all over the map. I'm not comfortable in this work.
Is there a second?
I moved.
I second.
During discussion?
I think I mean, it's probably going to echo what Member Dixon might say, but I think if we can start defining some of those metrics, like see a TIF improvement, see, I mean, this is probably high-level goals. It might be beyond stuff, but I think this is the kind of things that we're talking about for what we're trying to go for in this board. If we're talking about let's try and do big things, let's try and assess rates in east side of town for property values, or I don't know what metrics there are that we can really use to say we are right here today in 10 years. These are the numbers we're going to see, and if we get to hear, hey, we're going to feel good about this, or what are the numbers that we're going to track each year so that we can say these are the ones that are going to affect it. I mean, I know there's a lot of complications to all of that, but I think that's where my comfortability is. I mean, I think we've got a beautiful set of goals, or a beautiful track that we can go down, but yeah, I mean, if we don't know where we're going to end up, and we don't know if we're going to be on the right track with this. I think it's like the boat's pointed in the right direction, but we don't know where we're going to land with or something.
And that's the purpose of the plan. It's to give us direction. So what we're not seeing right now as a group is what does success look like, and we totally agree with you. We can come up with quantifiable metrics. You could see it from what you had before. We can certainly use those same methods to demonstrate the taxable value growth in the area based on the baseline of where we are now to where we want to be 5 years from now, or 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and 10 years from now. That's pretty simple to do. We can have that economics done, but I think what's important for us is that you got to be very clear with us. What are your what do you want us to do? I mean, you're asking for these synergistic projects, transformative projects. Is there another big project that we're missing that the city of Gainesville needs?
Relationship with FDOT.
Ms. Dixon had a question, had a comment as well.
Well, I was just going to ask to the motion, just again wondering, is it possible to have another meeting next week? You know, to be respectful of your schedule and the March 17th that's already been planned. And then I guess my other comment would be, maybe an answer to that. I would like us to, even if this motion passes, I'd like us to have a motion that gives staff some guidance
So I'd like to say that I understand this as a draft document. It says you want a motion on a draft document here. It's not a final document. It's not what's going forward. I appreciate, because a lot of my work is trying to keep momentum and things going. I appreciate the need to keep progress moving forward and recognizing that there's some risk on our part in a way with approving draft, but it is draft, and maybe there's some caveats that could go into that. And I think that maybe we need to make sure you have some clear notes as you move forward, but it's not this that we're approving, and that I have trouble with that.
Mr. Chair.
I don't, just a minute, sir, I'm finished my comments. I don't have a problem moving forward with this as a draft document, so I'd be voting against the motion because I think we need to give you all something to move forward, and I think this is a good representation of what I heard in all the meetings that I went to at the community before. So, yes, sir, go ahead.
I guess for me, to clarify, it says a draft, but I also know from also past experiences, when we go with this, it seems to be, this is what we're voting on, but when we get to the city commission, it's a very different thing. And so from past experiences with this, we're voting on this, yet it seems to be a very different thing when it gets to the governing body. And my caution and my concern is that we hear a lot of we're being listened to, but I just don't get that. So I'm happy to modify the motion to do that. I'm happy and I'm amenable to hear feedback from all of you to make it that. But my concern is I don't feel like we're being listened to, and I want to be very clear that my motion is not to not cause progress. But again, progress for just the sake of progress is not also moving. So we're saying this, but I know from past experience when we go before that body, whether it be joint city or the city commission, it's a very, very different thing. And so my thing is not to interrupt progress. So I'm happy to modify this motion, but I also want it to be something that's tangible and it's measurable and can be brought back to us and not just pie in the sky. Because to me, this is still just not, it's just anecdotal to me. It's not really, I don't know. I'm not comfortable with this, but I'm happy to modify it.
I have a question.
Mr. Nielsen had his hand, and then I'm going to go right back to you.
Mr. Chair, to Member Dixon's comment about a follow-up meeting, I'm amenable to that. I would, if we can fit it in with respect to everybody's schedule and the broader schedule of the City Commission, I'd like to have that meeting and have it focused on particular objectives on what we're dealing with instead of just a rambling conversation. I might add that I haven't been speaking too much about some of these projects and issues, and I have strong feelings about what really counts and what matters for the long term and what makes a difference. Some of the things that we need to deal with are not shiny objects, but are fundamentals and somewhat unsexy, really. But they really make a difference long term, and I'd like to get that up on the table in a follow-up meeting. We haven't talked about that yet. So if we can we tease out a date that we could come back? All of us may not be able to get there, but I'll go out of my way to be there in near term so that we can address the intentions of Member Dixon.
I'm going to let you all think about whether, because this isn't a date issue as much as it is, can you turn something around to answer the directed conversation he's talking about.
Right.
And I'm going to ask Ms. Turner Evans to give her a comment.
So I was just looking at the ongoing engagement timeline. So we had our first draft review. This is technically our second.
This is technically your
And
second.
then after that, it goes to community engagement tomorrow. The city and then it's unveiled to the public. So technically, this draft will become the final, right? No?
It's a draft.
It's
So
a draft.
It will be edited.
We still have to incorporate all the feedback
Yeah.
from tonight. So,
Right.
and to be quite honest, when Linda was speaking through the 5 things, I think a lot of those 5 things are here. I just think we have not delineated those yet in the plan. If you see at the end, it kind of falls off because there's still more information that we need to add to it. So, you know.
But it won't be like a third draft. I'm just making sure, like, it
No,
will.
but this is kind of our last chance to
Right.
get the final feedback. But, you know, spurring private reinvestment, filling in gaps, visible, impactful change, accomplishing something no one else can do. These are all things that we can easily address. And I think it's our responsibility to take this feedback and show you. Because it is a draft and we have to finish it. So,
If I could clarify one thing, if you look at the schedule, as I said, you're the first we come to. I mean, look at the schedule. You're the first body that we come to review the drafts. And your input is crucial. We can't do what we do without your input. So clear, concise, bulleted lists of the things you think we need to change make it so much easier. So we want to make sure that from this evening, because we're taking notes, you're taking notes. I know that, you know, everyone here is taking notes. I want to make sure that we consolidate that notes and we're all on the same page, because if we have clear direction, we can move super fast. And if that means that before we go to the city commission, we either have a meeting or we send you a document that you can, because I think you have to notice it, right? There may not be time, so maybe we send you the document so individually you can redline a PDF and send it back to us so we can clean it up before it goes to the city commission. I can guarantee you, even at the city commission meeting, they're going to have comments. They're going to want to make adjustments. They're going to want to make changes. And that's I've been doing this for a long time. I know how this works. And from past experience, if we really, really focus on the things we want to get done, it'll come together. So if you look at that list, it's a long list, right? There's a lot of projects on there. Everything, this is all in right now. So we need you to look at us truthfully and say, you know what? Maybe we don't want to move forward with that particular project. And just take it off the list. You know, if we need to consolidate and really get focused, we heard some mention about some things that are on the list that you probably think that maybe the city general fund should be budgeting and taking care of. We need to know that. And so we're hearing you, but we just need to have a definitive direction so we know where to go forward. Just very plain and simple.
So I just got a little confused. I want to clear up something when Sarah was answering Ms. Turner Evans. So you originally said that this has to be finished by the end of March. What has to be finished? A final plan? Okay, so if a final plan has to be, so on the March 7th, your question was really good. March 17th, when you unveil to the public, you are unveiling a final. So then, if we don't want, then I would have to support the motion not to go forward, because if we're not happy with what we have, you're saying that we're going to go to this meeting on city commission, and I understand what you're saying, Kona, but I also history has shown that they're a little fickle, that they might approve it. And so then we're stuck with a plan that we just said. So that's what I'm trying to. That's what. But then I hear you saying it's way, and I understand. But I can say right now, as far as this plan, I do like some of it. I am concerned about some of the projects, and I understand we're not voting on this. I get that. I understand that that's not coming with this. But some of those projects are in this plan. So to us, we're having this conversation saying, well, that's not really, we could change it. But when we're getting ready to finalize something, it's going to be harder to change. Right. So I think, and I would be amenable, like Mr. Nielsen say, to have another meeting to really talk about some of the measures and all the things that everybody's talking about.
No, I think it's obvious that you need more time to really absorb this, because the list of projects is new. You haven't seen it. The first time you saw it was in your backup. So because I feel like we're getting hung up on the actual projects at this point. The process of where we've taken this to get to where we are now, the rubber is meeting the road, right? So we have to make some decisions. So if there are projects, like I stated before, on the list that you're uncomfortable with, that you're just seeing, we need to see those edited, removed, whatever you want to make sure, because we don't want to go to the city commission if you're not happy with the plan. That makes no sense to us.
Mr. Chair. Just for my colleagues on the board, I'm open to either withdrawing or modifying the motion to make it where your comfort level is where you're at. I'm just sharing with you where I am at this time. I'm open to definitely having more discussion. I'm not going to get caught up in individual projects. I just feel the spirit of it. I think Ms. Seawright articulated it perfectly. Is history shows what it shows, and that's exactly what we're going to be going after that. So where the spirit of where my motion is for us to have more discussion on it. It's not to hold up progress, but for us to have more deep discussion and make sure we're being listened to. So if I can modify my motion, or if you have input, please let me know.
So to that end, I think I'll try to give some specific feedback based upon what I've heard, and I'm open to if I've missed anything, please let me know. But I'm trying to help us,
Streamline.
get where we need to go to give them some additional direction so that they can bring us back something that's more reflective of what we'd like to see. So what I've heard from several members, more of an emphasis on housing, on affordable housing, that is a little light on that aspect.
Not just affordable.
Not just, yeah.
Okay, housing.
Revitalization, rehab, all that kind of stuff.
So we'll just say,
Because that's what they talk about in the community. That's what 21% say it.
okay, so housing.
27.
More emphasis on housing initiatives. That we need some kind of measures that are outlined in the plan per Linda and Armando's 5 buckets. I think that those were, Linda, you outlined them, and then you had a couple of tweaks.
Specifically, something coming back with Ethan Waldo and the Infinity Line, an in-depth discussion on that, that is drawn out, a synergistic plan of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think just measures in general. Like, I'm not seeing any,
Yeah.
you know, like
Jason, good point.
yeah, general measures. Yeah.
So some recommendations on measures and impact. The Spring Hill neighborhood, that was one that I heard a specific comment on, that we want to see that included. The Infinity Line and how that relates to Waldo Road. Losing the pie charts. So anything related to budget, we don't want associated with the plan at this point. Just a conceptual, kind of agreement on where we're trying to head. And potentially thinking about, this is for you all, if we want to put any additional emphasis on public space and streetscape than what's currently there. And lastly, additional consideration for East Side. Just generally speaking, those were my notes that I
I
had.
also agree that would be not to have the chart, the proposed.
Right, yeah.
They have proposed pie chart,
Yep.
as well as the outline drafting of projects.
Yep.
Would not.
Right, anything related to budget,
Okay.
just
So
associated.
we're on a little bit of a roll, so you don't need to pull anything yet.
I'm not putting anything
Okay.
on clarity on what
But I was thinking, if other people have bulleted items that they could throw out there in a directive way, then let's get those on the table now and see if we can get that to them. So Ms. Dixon,
Well, I have a question, just in terms of projects, because from what I can see in this plan, really the only pages that specify projects are 86 and 87, is that correct? Those are really and what I'm seeing is there's some mismatch between the maps and the list on page 86. So I'm looking at these 2 pages.
Yeah.
Because I think that the more the projects are somewhat generic and they're more about areas and corridors as opposed to specific interventions, then I think we probably can get to a comfort level to adopt this in terms of it's a framework, and then we figure out the details later at budgeting. So whether or not the Infinity Line is on the map, as long as we've talked about initiatives that have to do with transportation, and there is the dot on here for the 8th and Waldo. Improvements is on the map. But what I noticed is, like Waldo and Williston is on the list on page 86, but the dot isn't there on this map. It's on the other map with the initiative, but it's not on this one, so.
That's probably a miss.
Yeah, we probably need to add that. The other one I picked up was Midtown. Midtown is on the list. There's no dot on the map. I don't even know that it needs to be on the list, because I think, kind of feeling, and I think I'm hearing from everybody else, that's kind of been dealt with. So I think that could actually come off of the list.
Private development.
And it's not on the map. So those were, so just in terms, so I'm trying to think too, and I've kind of got a list here that includes a lot of the things that Carrie said. But in terms of focusing on projects, I think, any comments we have on these 2 pages are really the key. And I think the more we keep it kind of general, the better we'll be able to work with it going forward.
That's very helpful. I mean, the list is up here. And if there are projects up here that we need to remove, or initiatives, or programs, that will really help us.
Let me flesh out.
I got a couple of things. We'll get back there. I got 2 people over here have been dying to say something as well. So Palmer, then Nielsen, then we'll go to Mr. Gilman.
On this list, the one thing that I'd really like to see is Lynch Park. Some way we're addressing that. We've got people sleeping in the park, and when they brought up the Midtown policing and that we're spending $200,000 to keep frat kids from puking on the street, I think one of the things that actually helps a lot more is if we can find ways to do anything over there. It takes 15 minutes for the police to get down to quarters if you call them. I mean, it seems pretty silly to me.
Well, real quickly, just to expand, I think the idea of just saying streetscapes is a bit superficial. Let me just say that if you want to be successful in terms of a socially healthy community, an economically healthy community, you have to have people together, colliding with one another, interacting, being creative, learning from one another, learning from our differences. And to do that, you have to create spaces in which people feel comfortable, are glad to be there, and safe. And that goes into a mix of things, a whole list of things, including lighting, good sidewalks, safety from vehicles, locations that attract you to hang out, to relax, places that have a lot of dense activity. That is something that is not thought about in terms of project. But without that, good things don't happen. Particularly the private sector isn't interested in that kind of investment in areas that don't have that. So please understand where I'm coming from that. And I think I would say this in my final comment, where most of that deficiency comes from is more on the eastern side of this district than on the western side. So I think the emphasis for attention to those factors need to be in large measure on the east side.
Can you clarify that?
Clarify what?
What you mean by that?
Banks. Like banks and grocery stores.
Well, I'm talking about.
He's really talking about placemaking.
I'm talking about placement.
Okay. No, I got you.
But those things involve a lot of details that we don't think about in terms of just a project here and a project there. That's something that is important to everything we do.
Just for your information, which may or may not be in your backup, recently we developed some character images to describe the objectives, and they do exactly what you just described. They show life.
Yeah.
And, I think we've been working really fast, so we are where we are, no excuses. But we have those images, and whether you're going to share it now or later, it's
at our next meeting.
At our next meeting. So I just want you to know that we fully understand where you're going.
Thank you.
So,
Mr. Gomez.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I think something that would give life, and I don't want to nitpick each individual project, but I think to give life to a vibrant community, there's been some leaders and my friends and neighbors talk about where we live now. there doesn't seem to be life. We have to travel 40 minutes for life to enjoy some remnants. If you have to travel 40 minutes for a grocery store, that's not life. That's a challenge. If we call it heartwood, when the heart is hurting because we can't get to some place like it's not equitable for others. I would love to have, we don't have Earth Fair anymore, but I liked it when it was there, or Lucky's, or any of it's the only option we have, and I'm just giving an example of where we could go with this, is thinking about the bigger picture. For some that affects some of you that enjoy a standard of living, some of us don't enjoy that standard of living. So it's not the same for everybody. It's not a one size fits all. There's certain needs in certain communities that are there that others don't enjoy. And so with that, I think a perfect synergy that gives life to a project that meets that I really would like to see back is the infinity line, because it gives life where all of us can impact and collide together. We can all meet each other on the trails, ride and walk and enjoy and skate and do all these other things. We can enjoy the green space, right? I want to see that because why? It brings life, right? The other thing is, with 8th and Waldo, traditionally, when it looks old and we can revitalize it, I want to see something. As a matter of fact, Mr. Chair, what I wanted to do is actually just come back and present to the board about some things at a later date, that doesn't impact with this. If it's fine, it goes, but something that is fleshed out, really fleshed out about 8th and Waldo, whether it be, because we have hydrological studies and engineering studies, renderings, et cetera, that have been done, that were not presented and done justice to this board. But something that shows tangential and real economic investment to grow the economy, that we're thinking outside of the box for areas that are truly impoverished and have urban decay, particularly East Gainesville, East Side, whatever you want to call it. Whether it be the Waldo Road corridor, I'm fine. I agree with Ms. Dixon completely on the framework. I'm happy to go framework rather than nitpick, because I think economic investment, not just painting shrubs and Aztec grass. Sorry, not gonna do it. So that's what I'm really coming with. So if you need more feedback on what I mean by that, I can do that later.
Hey, Ms. Dixon.
Well, I just had a question, because this slide, the project list in this slide is not in the plan anyway.
It's not, it's this.
It's different. And as I just sat here and went down it, a lot of them are the same. The job center, I'm not even sure what that is. I know what the job center is, but I don't know what the project is. Eastside Food and Mobility Hub, Midtown Policing, we already talked about. There's a lot of appetite for that. The
I think
finance
what you heard
program.
staff say is it's some projects were added by administration.
Yeah, the landscape maintenance, the residential paint program, maybe we like that, maybe we don't. The sod grant program, property acquisition, and community partnership grants, I'm not even sure what that is.
So I'm
But they're
going to
not
get it
here.
late. I'm going to try and move this forward.
Okay.
There's a motion and a second on the table to not approve this plan.
And I'm happy to modify or withdraw it at the pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chair,
The best way to do it is to call the
I
question
call the question.
and have people vote the way they
Okay.
want to go. So
Call the question.
the motion is to not approve the plan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hands, please. One,
Raise them high.
not in the audience, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Did you get the count?
7.
Just a point of clarification, so the discussion about bringing it back.
We'll
that's
we've made more motions in a minute.
So first we need to vote it down.
Okay, we got to move this thing forward. All right, so this is to not approve the plan. We got one more that just added. You
Hold on.
get it?
Roll call.
Can we?
She's taking it.
You got it anyways.
Hold on, we're voting. Please be quiet.
Who, on this side? So,
Keep your hands up if you're voting to not approve the plan.
okay.
All in favor of the opposite of that? Denying the motion to not approve the plan.
Which is not actually approving the plan.
It's not. It's denying the motion to not approve the plan.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
All right. Now we're back to square one. Any other conversations that people want to have? We can entertain another motion.
Mr. Chair, could
Again,
we-
this is a document that, go ahead.
is it possible for us to schedule a follow-up meeting within the next 2 weeks?
So it will need, the agenda will need to be published 7 days before.
Okay. well, that
Which
means
puts
a week-
us-
oh, Okay, that means within a week and 2 weeks.
Mhm.
That week, can we do it?
Well, it's only one agenda item, yeah.
Late?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, so the agenda, I mean, I could upload it tomorrow, the agenda.
I just need to be very clear, and just to remind you that if we don't meet the March 17th deadline, we've got an issue. Be very clear, because the March 17th deadline is the deadline we have to get approved by the end of the month. End of March, we have to get this approved to the county. We don't get it done, then we're in jeopardy of what you've been planning for, all the money. We're in jeopardy. I just want to let you know that. I have to be honest. That's what my job is, to tell you what we're at risk. Yeah.
Okay, so that's why I said we'll modify the motion.
Okay, Ms. Dixon.
I will make a motion that we reconvene first available, and in respect to the city's need to keep on the schedule, but the board's desire to approve a more final plan before it moves on.
Point of question. Can we, they call special meetings, and I want to know what the policy is to call a special meeting that can be called. We can call a special meeting.
We can recess this meeting.
Let's get a second to the motion.
I will second that motion.
All right, so the discussion is, the motion is to have a special meeting, to call a special meeting of this group and have this plan with revisions shown back to this group.
I'm trying to help.
No, you please do.
I just asked, can we continue this meeting?
That's what I said.
That's what we were trying to do. We continue this
That way,
meeting.
then you don't have to announce it ahead of time. I mean, you don't have to
You have
notice
to
it.
announce it, but we.
Notice it.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
I will modify the motion
Candace,
to
already
a
been seconded.
continuance of this meeting.
It's already been seconded.
Then will you second?
I will second the continuance.
All right.
Discussion. Call the question.
Question?
Well, hold on, let's make sure we
We
got
gotta
a
get a
question
date.
and a date.
Oh, we got a good day.
We're looking
Thank you, Warren.
25th.
That's fine.
What day is that on, Tuesday?
That's a week from tonight.
I mean, do we still have to give it 7 days in advance on a continuation? No, because it's continuation,
No, it's
it's the agenda.
If you would allow us, we're going to schedule for the 25th. But we have some issues. We will get on the phone to you tomorrow to adjust your calendar or send something out to you. You will allow us to do that. So we're going to put in the calendar with the idea that we're going to amend this to have a meeting on the 25th. If we have some issue with the advertisement, we will send you out a flag with some dates for you to give us so we can make that day.
Can we find out if you can get a quorum?
Okay. We'll do that.
So,
I'll be here.
Right now.
I won't be here.
Oh, no.
I'll be there.
I have a very
I'll be here.
highly qualified vice chair that can manage this. So everybody who right now can make the 25th, please raise your hand. Do we have a quorum? It doesn't look that way.
Well,
I
Mr.
will
Chair,
be
is that
late.
the only date? Because I think all of us, if you can, we can modify that date.
You are out of time. I think we're out of time.
We would have 9 on the 25th.
Yeah, already.
Is it possible for people to join in via phone if they can't be here?
I
in
mean,
person?
for discussion purposes,
Yes.
not for voting purposes.
I'll be driving back from St. Augustine, so I can call in until I get here at probably 6-ish.
Question. So we're gonna have 9. Is that gonna be with everything you're gonna be coming back? Are you gonna be bringing back the feedback that we're giving you today at that meeting as well?
And tomorrow.
Okay.
That's cutting it.
Well, I would, maybe you could spend a minute talking about the way that will come back. I'm guessing this probably isn't reprinted in its entirety by that date, but you may have an appendix set of bullet points that get incorporated into here that say these were items that this body wanted to include. That gives you the ability to put that together. All right, got a question down here.
Question, yes. So for the next meeting, so we know, so I can be clear of what exactly we're trying to do here. The thing that resonates with me is the word framework. And it seems like we're trying to get to projects. So are we trying to come up with a way to evaluate current projects and future projects as to whether or not this is something we're definitely going to do? Is that what we're trying to do? Or is it something else?
Yeah, what is their impact? I think that was a great word. Like, is it a large impact or a small impact? That's my impression.
Can you state that question again? I'm sorry.
So I hear the thing framework. What we have here is a framework for us to consider current projects and future projects. And I'm wondering if we're trying to define what qualifies a project going forward and what we have in terms of deciding, no, we don't want that project, yes, we want that project. Future projects come along, this is what we have in place to evaluate whether or not we want that project to exist.
What we've done thus far is created this document to help us to really focus in and hone in on those projects. And the list of projects we have, the majority of them support these initiatives, this information. So what we need to understand is, out of that list, which ones are your priority projects? We've isolated the objectives that are very, very straightforward. We know that overlapping objectives make it even better, just as Warren was discussing. I mean, if we have all those objectives working in one bucket, that means that project's going to be fantastic, and we will have measured success. I know from experience.
So this plan, though, you said this list isn't on the table.
That list is not on the table.
This is, which is your criteria. We've heard several people talk about making sure that our criteria sheet match what we're searching for. So using that, are there some specific items that we can ask them to go and add to their criteria sheet right now? Pardon?
May I make a suggestion?
Sure.
One of the things that I'm hearing is that there's two specific pieces, and I feel like a lot of people need a lot of time to read through and absorb and not only take the conversations from today, but also to look through the plan fully. But the two things that I'm hearing is sort of that benchmarking, having something that is measured success, and then the other piece that I'm hearing is a deeper dive into the project list and looking for opportunities, maybe things that are supported or not supported. Would it be ideal, this is just a suggestion, to have what I call healthy homework, where you have time to go home, you have time to absorb, and if you emailed your suggestions on those two things to Tricia, then we could gather that and have something to discuss on Monday or Tuesday's meeting. And that's just me from because that's what I'm hearing the pinch points are with this as of right now, outside of the budget and other things. But I'm just looking for a way where everybody has time to communicate, because time is of the essence, and really, I can't tell you enough, we really do care, and we're doing everything we can to gather all of this information and to do this in the healthiest and thoughtful way that we can, but we need your help. And the only way I know how to get your help is to have that emailed to us so that when we come back, we can have a healthy discussion on those items. And that's
Well, what I'm trying to do is get Kona the information so that he can make adjustments between now and Tuesday. If he doesn't get the email until Tuesday, that's a problem.
I'm not sure how much.
He's taking, Mr. Chair, he's taking notes.
And you're comfortable that you've been heard? And that
Yes.
You're comfortable with you guys?
As far as you were asking anything to be added, I just want to make sure, because I don't want to say more. I think, I don't know how much more clear that could be articulated, Colin. Did you understand where I was coming from at all? Or is there any discrepancies or misunderstandings? All right, cool. I'm good.
Yeah, so we have a motion and a second to continue, correct?
Yes.
We still need to vote on that. Did you have something else to add to that?
Yeah, I guess it's to the motion. I just wanted to understand, as we're putting together our thoughts and comments, what level of specificity on projects is the plan required to have? Because kind of what I was thinking when I was looking at this page 86 and 87 was the more we could keep it kind of high level, then we don't have to debate the specifics today. But if the plan is going to include details like you had on the slide, and we haven't even really been shown that in terms of that's in the plan, I'd just like to know, do the details need to be in there or not in there?
It's a great question, because we debated this back and forth with Lee, with everybody. We have 10 years. We know how much money we have to spend down. We're not going to get any more. We know what we have to spend down. And so one of the suggestions was to determine 3 or 4 synergistic, transformative projects that we know we can really put dollars to, that we could budget, and then have the balance of the monies that would be spent more of the even spend utilize for many of the other smaller projects over time that could be a little bit more flexible. It's kind of a win-win situation, which not only the residents that came to the business owners that came to the community meetings, but you all agreed to this hybrid approach. So I think the more specific we can get about those big projects, those transformative, those synergistic projects, and put some sort of budget to, the better off we'll be. It'll give us some guidance, and it'll also give us some flexibility. So it's kind of a win-win situation. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess I'm just not sure that in this table we were given or in that slide that I really saw, you know, the 3 or 4 big ideas. So maybe that's something you can bring back to us. Otherwise, it seems to me it's more an exercise we would do when we're actually doing a budget.
Right.
When we're working on the annual budgets, which would be what comes next.
All right, any other comments to the motion on the floor? So the motion is to continue this meeting. Did we decide a date, or we're going to have you all
No,
select a date?
February 25th.
Continue this meeting on February 25th, 5:30? Same time, same bat channel, and the location you'll check. All in favor of that motion? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Since we have everybody here, we've got another couple of hours.
I was hungry.
Me too. Are there any last comments that we need to make to give them any information? Is there anything that you have a question of us to be able to go back to your work? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chair, one last thing. I would like to come back at the next meeting to present on not at the continuing meeting, but our next regular scheduled meeting to present these and all that.
Okay.
I'd like to be added to the agenda.
Mr. Unavailable.
Public comment? Okay.
Tricia, did you?
Did you get a second?
My public comment is that, in my plan, when I become mayor, which will be in 2 years, we'll put the money there to do each and every one of these projects. What Water Conservation Board is putting forth is going to complete each and every one of these projects. This here is something that is going to bring in a number around $19 million to just a faint escrow. This here project is going to take and bring into all the newspapers. This here project is a project I can't take and show you. I can't take and, I'm not supposed to be even talking about this project, but this project, which I can't mention, is going to be bringing the money to make the CRA and the Extreme Makeover, Gainesville Extreme Makeover, be on TV. We are going to take and have our own TV station of the Gainesville Extreme Makeover and help these people on the east side first. We are going to take and make this the new Gainesville adventure. And how this is going to happen is going to be happening once I became mayor. This can take and happen. If I don't become mayor, I don't get voted in, this here goes down the tube, just like GRU and just like Florida Power & Light and other entities that have transpired. But this here, I want to tell you right from the get-go, this here is a goal that our president, our governor, and other people who are in this amendment or agenda that is going to take and transpire. And we want to take and make this knowledge so that people know that they would have somebody behind that mayor chair that has not only power, but has an eyesight of each and every one of you. If a person like myself can't put himself or herself in your shoes, then we don't need to be there. And that's what Mayor Cole needs not to be there.
Thank you. We're dealing with CRA business. We appreciate your input.
Mr. Chair, I just moved that I wanted to present next meeting.
I think you can just request. you know.
Yeah, but it had to be seconded according to Tricia.
Comments,
Had to be seconded?
No, nah, he can.
If he wants to make a formal presentation
So
to the
that's a
board.
request to address
So
the
that's a
board.
question, that's a,
I mean, we didn't move to have cultural arts, did we, under?
No, that was-
Just the board?
yeah, that was vetted by staff and because it was time sensitive, we brought them.
We can make a motion and put it in if you want, if you
I
need
don't think you need
that.
a motion. If he wanna request a J the board, she do it the same way. Oh, she said you need a
Yeah,
motion.
I second
You
it.
made a motion, we got a
Okay.
second, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you all for your time.